She was over there too? Shonda was? Shonda, we were all at Giant. We missed you.
We took a picture of it and snapped it.
We were at Giant. We were at Giant. We were at Giant. We saw her pull. Well, you weren't with her, were you? We were in there getting taco stuff. We went to the Lowe's and had tacos.
Chinese food invite.
Oh, that's
But I
good.
didn't even get a senior plate. I was waiting for that.
Oh, that's what's up. What'd you get?
I got chicken fried rice, and I got a pork egg roll, and I got orange sesame chicken.
That's what's up.
I had breakfast, yeah. What kind of breakfast?
I had a waffle, some scrambled eggs, and bacon.
I want some waffle and bacon.
Because I don't really like pancakes. They kind of give you that extra oomph. Just a little though. So much is impressive. You have to like do it.
Did you ever fix cereal with that?
Yeah.
Come on, it's 7:15.
Ketchup egg cereal.
Oh, we'll be out of here by now.
I didn't in myself. I'm nervous. Thursday night, after getting thrown out of Walmart, they called me.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. An executive session was held in advance of this meeting to discuss personnel, contract, and legal matters. If everybody could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Have the spreadsheet. At this time, are there any public comments on agenda items only? All right, none. All right, there are none. Thank you. All right. Next up, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the March 12th, 2024 regular board meeting, March 19th budget workshop meeting, March 26th budget workshop meeting, April 3rd budget workshop meeting, April 9th policy committee meeting, and April 9th caucus meeting.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. At this time, send it over to Leah and Maddie.
Hi? Okay, there we go. All right. So first on our agenda, we have yesterday was Earth Day with Environmental Club, and that was really successful. We had the whole elementary school come up to the outdoor classrooms in the admin parking lot, and we colored with them, and we taught them about bees and skulls, and we talked a lot about the environment, and that was a lot of fun, and I think the kids really enjoyed it.
So Environmental Club has a lot of other events planned for the last bit of the school year. On May 10th, we are going trout stocking. So pretty much we have, it's with the Fish Commission, and we pretty much follow around this truck full of fish, and we stop at streams and we unload them, and then we get lunch, and it's a really fun day. We learn about fish and what the commission does and how to stock our streams. And then we also have Envirothon, which is May 1st. This is a competition between the Perry County schools, and there's a couple teams per school. And it's kind of like a big test, but it's a fun test. So you go around to different stations, and there's questions about wildlife, aquatic ecology, climate. There's a bunch of different questions, but it's really fun. You get ribbons, you get a lunch. It's a great day. And it's a good way to learn about the environment, and it's a good way to interact with our other Perry County schools.
So recently at the school we had Youth Art Day, and that was held on April 6th, and that was very successful. We had a lot of first place winners, and that was held here at Susquenita, I believe. Also, we have applications for the 11th grade student board representative, as Leah will be leaving us this year when she graduates, and we're very excited about that.
All right, so we have the mock crash coming up. This is for juniors and seniors, and it's a fake car accident, and it's used to spread awareness for impaired driving to students in preparation for prom. So we wanted to really quick thank all first responders and everyone helping out with the mock crash, whether you're acting or doing makeup or all that. It all helps.
Additionally, we have prom coming up. It is the 4th of May from 5 to 10 p.m. at the Sheraton Hotel for juniors and seniors and guests.
We have our regular honors breakfast on the 19th, and then we have our distinguished honors breakfast on the 18th. So congratulations to everyone who got distinguished honors or regular honors. Is it switched? Okay. Distinguished honors and regular honors breakfast on the 24th and the 26th. Okay.
Upcoming, we also have the high school visits for 8th graders, which is going to be a great opportunity for the 8th graders to get acclimated to the high school, and we're going to have tours around the school, and they're going to get shown around by seniors and learn a little bit about what the high school is about.
Another event that we have for the high school and for the 8th graders is a Black Hawk barbecue. It's coming up on May 14th, and we had one earlier this year, but it was just for the high schoolers. For the high schoolers, it's running 5 to 7, and it's an event. We have chalking your parking spot, food, drinks. We have music, yard games. It's a lot of fun, and it's used to just kind of celebrate the sports teams and just to have a good time. But for the middle school, it actually starts at 3:30. So for the middle schoolers, we're going to have it kind of set up like a club fair so they can be introduced to all the different activities at the high school. I know we have a couple clubs already committed to going. So Student Council, Environmental Club, Spanish National Honor Society, and maybe Leo Club. We're hoping to get a couple more, but the middle schoolers will also get food, drinks, yard games. They can stay till 7, interact with the high schoolers, and really get to see what they can do in high school other than just picking their classes.
On May 2nd, the Leo Club will be holding a blood drive, and students do need a permission slip for this. You can't just go in and give blood without parental permission. And then if you do that, you're going to get, I believe it's a free senator's ticket and a T-shirt. So students are encouraged to come out and give blood.
Along with trout stocking, we also have integrated PE on May 10th, which is a really fun event. It's an all-day event where students and people within the integrated PE class have a really fun day. It's all outside. It's on the track. They do activities like they throw shot put. They do running events. It's really fun. We have lunch together, and it's a great day to spend outside.
So recently we held elections for the new student council officers because we're graduating all of our officers. And a bunch of clubs are also doing officer elections because the seniors this year are very involved. And the new president for student council is Tierney Stumpley, so that's very exciting.
And finally, we had Minithon March 26th, and it was very successful. So our previous school record for money raised was approximately $14,000, and this year we beat our record, and we raised $17,419, which is amazing. I want to say thank you to everyone who participated, anyone who donated, and I want to say thank you to Mr. Funk and Mrs. Krismer because they got us an amazing plaque that will be hung in the lobby for our record. And that's all we have for April. Thank you.
I think certainly we would be repressed not to thank you for all of your hard work and leadership for the Four Diamonds Fund, for organizing this outstanding school event, but looking and organizing it for a larger cause, which is to help the students. So thank you for all of your leadership.
Thank you both. You saw me taking notes, right? So, Leah, I have to say, it's starting to make sense why we get along so well, because at least 3 of the things you mentioned included lunch, and I'm a very big fan of going to lunch as well. So, yes, all right. But thank you. All right. At this time, we'll go to Mr. Shepler and the media students' presentation.
Can you guys hear me? Cool. All right, we're going to kind of stand around as a crew up here. I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'll just kind of explain real quick our whole spiel here. Guys, come up here. Come up this way. All right. So I had a few of our media members come out tonight. We couldn't get everybody here just with sports and different activities. I have also my student teacher, Mr. Warfel, who's here, who was a big help with this as well. But anyways, with me is Vanna Gleim, who's a sophomore, Shiloh Snyder, who's a junior, and Delaney Kisner, who is a senior, 3 of our team members for media. I'm going to let them talk about some of the different things, but I just want to explain to you what happened. Back in the fall, the media team got together, and we were able to present. Ms. Pagliaro did a nice job, I know, helping and arrange that Chamber of Commerce event that was here. And we basically got to make some connections with local chamber businesses and stuff like that. So through that, we've done some work throughout the school year, making videos for them, helping with some website design and some things like that. We're learning too. We're not pros at all of this. But one of those connections came through the actual Chamber of Commerce themselves. They asked us probably back in January if we would put together just a short little video that highlighted some of the new and old businesses from the Chamber throughout Perry County, because they were celebrating their 15-year anniversary at a dinner that they just had last Friday. And so basically, we arranged this into 3 stages, and we're just going to talk kind of quickly about that. And I want their input too. But the first day was arranging this day that we took one of the school vans, and we stopped at 14 different businesses throughout Perry County, and we made a loop. I mean, we started here. Our first stop was out in Shermansdale. We were out to Loysville. We were to Millerstown, Newport, you name it. We were all around Perry County. So I wanted them to talk about, the girls want to talk about a little bit about that, just kind of some of the fun and what they did.
So, Mr. Funk got us donuts for the day, and we went out to, one place we went is Sweet to the Soul in Newport. It's this ice cream place, the best milkshake I've ever had. And we just met a lot of cool Perry County people who were just very happy to do what they're doing, and they were all very friendly, and I had so much fun.
What were we doing there? What were we doing at our stops?
We went and recorded it was kind of we sent out a troupe of all of us. There was 5 of us who just went and recorded all the businesses and cool little parts about them, and then we had do you'll see in the video, but they did we asked them a question about what does Perry County really mean to you, and they had some nice answers, and you'll hear them in the video.
I just wanted to say that it was really fun to be able to go out into Perry County and meet all of these lovely business owners and be able to talk to them and learn more about their businesses and what they're passionate about.
And tell them about your favorite business that we stopped at. One of the things I thought was really cool, and this even affected me now. I mean, I've taught here for 15 years. I live in Juniata, but, I know the area, and there were businesses that I had no idea existed in Perry County. And I think for kids that live in Perry County as well, it was eye-opening to be wow, we have that here, or this is amazing. We didn't know about it. And Delaney had one that she really fell in love with. So tell them about that.
So we made a trip out to this campground. It's called Paradise Stream. I forget actually where it is. Sorry about that. Loysville? Loysville, I believe. But me and Shiloh were actually going to take a trip there this summer because it was so cool. They had so much to do, so much just in the campground, and it's all included. So, yeah.
I think it was cool because this was all just the first day. This was just fun kind of setting this part up and doing this. But just getting out into the community and then being able to see what was available. And again, we took 2 other kids. two other kids with us that day. I also have to give a shout out to Miss Lote. My knee was banged up, and she drove the school van and trekked us all around the county, which was something. But like they said, we did this day. We descended upon 14 businesses, and we would just kind of go in, and we started filming and taking video shots, and we knew we'd come back, and we were going to take those shots to edit into little clips that we would use. So I'll let Savannah kind of talk about that next part real quick.
We then divided all the businesses up amongst the group, and then we basically just went through all of our footage that we collected and picked out a few of our favorite clips, and then we put those together to make 10-second clips of each business.
And actually, one of our students couldn't be here tonight. They were working. They were kind of like our like chief producer. So at the end of this, we took these 14 businesses, the 10-second clips, and then we had to do a lot of the audio and the text overlays and the music. And this student used, well, the kids used iMovie for editing your individual stuff, and then they used Logic Pro, which is something we have in the media room, and they were able to use, Logic Pro for the audio, but they used Final Cut Pro for making the videos, which kind of gives you more professional tools. They put together the final video. And the other thing that's cool about this, and one thing I've been teaching these kids all year, and I have to learn this too, is that like when you do a project, right, we send it back and we want you to fix this, want you to fix this, want you to fix this, and that's okay, right? Like we're working for other people, like we're doing like a job for these people. So they want a product, they want it a certain way, and maybe we say, we didn't like that, or we wouldn't. You have to work for the customer. You have to work for your base. So it's been really cool. We learned that process as well. They put together this video. We sent it to them a couple days before they made the final edits, and I know they showed it at the Chamber of Commerce dinner Saturday night, and then we're going to show it here. But since then, we've got, I think she emailed me as of yesterday, there were another 8 businesses that would like us. We were finishing up 2 other ones. Right now we're working on a video for Sis and Boyer, right? Sis and Boyer, I Care, and another one for the Perry County Council of the Arts for their youth programs they do. But we've got like 8 more businesses that we just got an email that want to contact. Now, I don't know if this all happened this year. We'll probably have to roll this into. But I will tell you this, these kids used Easter break. They worked over Easter. I mean, they did work because we had deadlines that we had to meet. They were amazing about it. So before I show the video, I'm just really proud of these guys. I always say this, these kids make me really look good. They do. They did amazing work, and they always do. So they rose to the occasion. They're doing authentic skills that they can do in producing. They all do other stuff. Shiloh's our chief editor for our podcast that's out every month. Savannah does all of our commercials and things like that. They all do many things in the media class. They're doing an awesome job. So with that, we'll show you our 2-hour documentary we made. Just kidding. Quick commercial for you guys.
Being lifetime residents of Perry County, it is very rewarding to serve our community. We love making connections and building relationships with our customers.
Being able to serve our community in this way is very important to Millerstone Vet Associates because we want our families to be a part of this community and see the value of a small business within the community, to see the difference we can make, not just in being veterinarians, but in the ways we give back to the community.
So this business was created with the Perry County people in mind. I was able to connect the farmers of Perry County to the eaters of Perry County, and it really thrived because I really focused on Perry County specifically. We live in a unique county where everyone either is family or feels like family.
We're part of the community through volunteering with 4-H, volunteering with Lions Club. We live in the community. Every single person that works in our office at this point lives here, so we really feel like we're members of the community.
Hey, they deserve this. Again, storyboard. Again, we got businesses. We were given the business that we had to go to. I know a couple of them were more doll stores. I promise it was just me inside for that stuff, those shots. But honestly, we wanted to reach out, so we worked with the Chamber of Commerce. They gave us the things, but the kids wrote the storyboards. The kids came with the text. They did everything. It was awesome. So it's really cool to see that. So yeah, thank you guys. Do you guys have any questions for them?
Great
Thank you.
job. Thank
Thanks,
you so
guys.
much. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming and showcase.
All right. I had some treasurer's reports noted there. And next up, I need a motion to approve the following payment of orders for general fund prepaid for $85,938.26, and the general fund check summary for $672,490.12.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next up, I need a motion to approve a resolution permitting each member school district of the CPA-CTC to adopt the lease and sublease once final debt service payments under the sublease are known, along with allowing each member school district, including Susquenita School District, the following: to execute a certificate terminating the existence of the Cumberland Perry Area Vocational Technical School Authority, execute documents necessary to terminate an existing lease for the technical center and member school districts, and execute a special warranty deed conveying the technical center facilities to the member school districts, including Susquenita School District and the joint board of the CPA-CTC.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. Could someone explain briefly for the community what exactly that means?
As part of the Cumberland Perry expansion project, in order for the Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center cannot obtain or manage its own debt, it needs to create an authority. The original authority was 50 years old, to my understanding, and this dissolves the original authority and creates a new lease payment to member school districts and allows for the expansion project to move forward as another step in making sure that we continue to provide access to career and technical education for all students of Cumberland, Perry, and a small portion of Adams County as well, as one of our member schools are from Adams County, Upper Adams School District.
So for everyone who's not familiar, that what was formerly called the VOTEC is now the Career Technical Center, and all the sending schools have agreed to allow them to build to expand. This is necessary for us to approve so that could happen.
Further discussion? All right. At this time, we're going to take a roll call vote on this one.
Mrs. Raven?
Yes.
Mrs. Walborn?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey Reed? Yes. Mr. Lehman?
Yes.
Mrs. Stingley?
Yes.
Dr. Coutile? Yes. Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Next, I need a motion to approve a resolution to permit Mr. Holmes and Dr. Fox to execute all documents and agreements for Susquenita School District and the Commonwealth Finance Authority as required for the Facilities Improvement Competitive Grant application.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
So once again, can we get a quick explanation?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of this competitive grant process is that we need a resolution authorizing that we're permitted to apply for this said grant. The grant is for improvements throughout the district for certain particular items, such as HVAC, building envelope, and other areas that fit within the criteria of this application. This application, I believe, is due in May. It's a competitive application that will be scored, and information, I believe, will not be released until September, and it is, this is one of the steps to allow us to apply for that. It does not guarantee that we will be accepted, and any acceptance, though, is garnered upon your approval.
Does this grant require the district to match a certain percentage of the grant? Is that why we need to vote?
It does. So depending upon how much we apply for, the maximum is $5 million. The match would be, I believe it's 25%. So that would be around 1.2 million match, depending upon that. So depending upon how much is applied is depending upon the match. And there is a $100 application fee, which I've never seen in any grant application before. But there's a $100 application fee to even apply for it. I've certainly looking at some of the projects and needs throughout the district, we feel we would be able to be competitive and do our best to be able to apply for this. And this gives us an opportunity to move forward with that. And any final approval of those funds would be designated upon your approval.
Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. Next, I need a motion to approve the Act 93 three-year agreement for the 2024 to 2027 timeframe.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right. 7F, do we want to move into discussion on this before we throw this one out there? All right, the verbiage of the motion might change, so.
So if it may, for a point of order, we would like to welcome some guests this evening to give us, in our financial team, an update as to where we are currently in the market. And I'm pleased to welcome Lauren Stadel from Raymond James, Ryan Brockman from Raymond James, Garrett Moore, he is from PFM, and Ben Reed from Meddy, Evans, and Woodside as Bound Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. As Dr. Fox mentioned, I'm with Raymond James. Also with me, Lauren Stadel, returning from last week, Garrett Moore, and also we have bond counsel here this evening, as this is a voting meeting. So once I give an update on where we stand with the bank loan proposals and the market and how interest rates have changed over the last week, I'll turn it over to Mr. Reed to go through the bond resolution. If we start on page 2 of tonight's handout, this looks very similar to what we went through last week. But before I go through this, I want to give a high-level recap of the presentation from last week. The financing team sent around a bank loan RFP to 15 lenders, commercial banks and regional banks. We received a pretty good response rate. 6 lenders provided differing proposals for the maximum $15 million loan. At the time, the recommendation was a proposal from TD Bank, who was offering a fixed rate, but it was on an indicative basis, meaning once the school signs the rate lock agreement, which would be tomorrow morning, we could officially lock the rate in, and it would be fixed for the term of the transaction. So TD Bank was one that offered an indicative rate, the other being Capital One public funding. We received 4 other proposals: Webster Bank, JP Morgan Chase, S&T Bank, and FNB. And those proposals all carried a fixed rate that was not indicative. So the rate that was in the proposal from last Tuesday is the actual rate that they're willing to hold through an acceptance of up to noon tomorrow. So if there was a different proposal you wanted to consider and wanted to move forward with, we would just need to notify them in the morning, and the rate that's listed is the rate that you would receive.
So Ryan, I'm sorry to cut you off. Indicative rate could really mean it could change by tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
Correct, yes. Some institutions, their policy is they will not offer a fixed lock-in rate until they actually have an executed contract, the rate lock agreement. And that is to protect the bank from changes in interest rates. So they don't want to offer a rate and have it out there for, you know, a week plus and have something significant happen in the market that changes rates, and then, you know, they're tied to that lower rate when interest rates in the market are much higher. So like I said, there's 2 of these institutions offered it an indicative rate. The other 4 are a fixed rate that's not indicative. It's the rate that appears on the screen. And again, last week at the time, the lowest proposal and the recommendation from the financing team was to move forward with the TD proposal that was indicative at the time at a 4.23% fixed with an 18-month prepayment provision. As I mentioned last week at the meeting, there were a couple pretty key economic indicators that were coming out later in the week. Last Wednesday, there was a big inflation report for CPI. Thursday, there was another inflation report, PPI, that came out. And then there was a retail sales figure that came out, I believe it was on Monday of this week. The CPI number was hotter than expected. The markets reacted. Interest rates spiked immediately. And there's a rate chart I'll show you on the next page. But to give you an idea, some of the different spots on the Treasury curve increased more than 30 basis points just from last Tuesday evening till now. So interest rates have really risen. Some of that is because of the hotter than expected inflation. Retail sales came in much higher than expected. So we're seeing higher prices, but we're not seeing consumers, you know, holding back from spending. So spending is still strong. Prices are high. There's also a very strong labor market. Chair Fed Powell came out today and reiterated that they need to get inflation under control. We're nowhere near the 2% long-range target. So he expects rates to remain high for longer. Earlier in the year, the expectation for most economists was that the Fed would be cutting rates this year, anywhere between 4 and 6 rate cuts. About a month ago, that had been ratcheted down to about 3 rate cuts. We're at a point now with this recent inflation data that the expectation is that there may be 1 rate cut coming this year. There may be none. We've actually heard that there could actually be a rate increase at some point. So no one knows where we're headed based on all this data that we've received over the last week and inflation leading up to last week. It appears as though rates are going to remain where they're at, if not rise. So the impact, again, TD Banks was an indicative rate. We have refreshed that rate probably 5 or 6 times since last Tuesday. The next day, Wednesday morning, I reached out to the bank, got an update. Overnight, that rate went from a 4.23 up to a 4.29. At the end of last week, I requested another updated rate, and they came back with a 4.35%. Today, the rate that I had that was refreshed when I left the office and put this book together was a 4.40%. So it went from a 4.23 up to a 4.4%. I got a call from the gentleman at TD. As of the close of business, it increased again. It's at a 4.43%, which is not reflected in this book because I had to print some copies before I hit the road. 2 other things I want to point out. That rate changed, but there are terms of some of these proposals that also changed. And the reason for that is when we sent out the RFP and when we drafted that RFP, we put language in there that says that the borrower, the school district in this case, has the ability to negotiate with any of those lenders the terms of their proposal. So seeing where TD Bank's rate was headed, we decided to start reaching out to some of those other banks to see if they could tighten up some of their terms. Webster Bank stood out because they offered a 4.29% fixed. It was not indicative, but they had pretty unfavorable prepayment terms, and that was a sticking point for the administration through all the conversations we had leading up to the sending out of the bank loan RFP. Their original proposal for Webster Bank had a 3-year lockout period, so non-callable for 3 years. We wouldn't be able to refinance or restructure that debt. And then they had 2 additional years where there would be a 1% penalty if you prepaid. So essentially, it was a 5-year call period. We reached out to them. They went to the higher-ups. They were able to knock that down to a 2-year lockout period. Year 3 would be prepayable with a 1% penalty, and year 4 would be prepayable at a 0.5% penalty. So after 4 years, it would be prepayable anytime with no penalty. We also reached out to FNB Bank, who originally proposed a 4.77%. They really wanted the deal. They're your depositor. So they agreed to lower the rate from a 4.77 to a 4.45 fixed, not indicative, it's fixed rate, and it's prepayable anytime with no penalty. So that's 2 basis points higher than where TD is now. But again, you still have some interest rate risk with the TD proposal, as that is indicative through when you would sign that rate lock agreement. So those proposals are pretty close. Obviously, it helps that FNB has the prepayable anytime with no penalty, whereas TD Bank has an 18-month lockout period. On the right, we have the total debt service that we have updated, so you can see what the impact is to all those different rate options. At the bottom, like we presented last week, those are the institutions that decided to not bid on the RFP.
Can I ask a quick question before you change this slide?
Yep, absolutely.
So I was just looking to see, just to compare the total net debt service amount from the 423 to what it might, how much that really makes a difference, on a $15 million loan. And it looked like it was about a $700,000 swing with the new, just looking at TD from 423 to 44. But then when I'm looking at the numbers for like S&T Bank, which didn't change, it's 4.4. It was 4.4 last week, 4.4 this week. It's showing a $500,000 difference. What is causing that?
That's a great point. So originally we structured this to include capitalized interest. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, capitalized interest is a fund that we would set up when this bank loan were to settle. We would set aside money to make your first 2 interest payments so that there was no budget impact in your 2025 fiscal year, because you have 1 loan still outstanding, and this loan has not been accounted for in your budget for 2025. So a portion of what you would borrow would go to make those first 2 interest payments. So there wouldn't be any impact at all in 25. So when I originally ran the numbers, and last week's presentation showed the net, so that is after capitalized interest. Now it's higher because we're looking at just total debt service. But what that does is that additional roughly $500,000, it looks like your debt service is higher, but you're actually getting that $500,000 at settlement in your project fund. So there's 2 different ways to look at it. We can show it either way. If you're still interested in capitalized interest, I can show you what the net number looks like, which is about $500,000 lower than the numbers that appear on that right column.
So then where I'm seeing what looks like it might have been a $700,000 swing is more like a $200,000 swing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Good question. Yeah.
All right, this is a loaded question for you.
Oh boy.
If it were you, which one would you go for? And what do you predict for the next?
Oh, I don't like making predictions. I don't want to be on record making predictions. As far as the
No
proposals,
crystal ball.
TD banks could go either way, but based on recent history, it's continued to climb every time we've got a refresh rate, and no one knows where rates are going to be tomorrow morning from now. So there's a risk associated with that. That's interest rate risk. Personally, I think the FNB proposal makes more sense. It costs 2 more basis points based on the rate that TD is offering right now. But you know the rate, it would be locked tonight with approval. And you also get optionality from day one. So it's prepayable anytime, no penalty from day one, rather than waiting 18 months. So if something significant happened with, tensions heating up in the Middle East with Iran and Israel, and we saw, a flight to quality, where oftentimes when there's significant events like that, people rush to treasuries. They purchase safe investments, which is known as flight to quality, and then you see rates come down. So some event like that could happen, then you'd have the ability to refinance this to a lower rate if you so choose to. So they're two pretty good proposals. I think based on other proposals that we have received for other clients over the last 6 months, they're still very favorable proposals in the grand scheme of things. So to answer your question, I would say I would probably lean more towards the FNB just because there's a little more certainty there.
Good
So
answer.
I would hate to approve for you to move forward with something, and then tomorrow morning we wake up and
Right.
the rate's slightly higher, and
Right.
it's just not what you really wanted. So
Thank you.
Did S&T come back with anything more favorable with their kind of limitations on where that money needed to sit with them?
no, that's the sticking point. That is why that's not kind of one that we think is in the running, because the point of structuring this loan to be 15 million or under, as I mentioned last week, was we can get this small issuer exemption for school districts, which means you can borrow the 15 million and you can invest it at a higher rate during the temporary period, which is 3 years. S&T came back after that meeting Wednesday they got back to me and said that their current investment rate on that fund is about a 385. So you'd be borrowing at a 440 and then receiving 385 on your investment, which is negative arbitrage. So that doesn't help. So with the other options that don't have any kind of depository relationship attached to, you can turn around and invest with Pliget or purchasing longer term treasuries or whatever you want to do at a rate that's, the 2%, the 2-year U.S. Treasury eclipsed 5% today. So, just to give you an idea, 5% compared to the S&T rate of a 385, that's real dollars. One more question? Yes.
You had said with the conflict going on in the world or whatever, and with inflation changing, these numbers, the interest rates could eventually start to go back down or go down. I know you can't predict, but what kind of a time frame would we be looking at for something like that to start to occur?
It's anyone's guess. It could happen tonight. We could wake up tomorrow and we could see the 10-year Treasury dropping 10, 20 basis points, just like the swing. If you flip to page 3, just real quick, I just want to show you the impact from one inflation report. We have, there's 2 different rates on here. We have the 2-year Treasury rate, which would be the investing side. So if you were to invest the funds for a 2-year period, like I said, that rate actually increased to over 5% at some point today. But as of close of business when we left the office, that was about a 4.97%. That rate would be the investing side of your funds once this loan would settle. The red line is the 5-year U.S. Treasury. We've had several conversations with TD Bank, the one that has the indicative rate, and they're saying given the term of this loan being 10 years, the weighted average life is about half of that, about 5 years, a little bit longer than 5 years. So the key rate that is changing their rate behind the scenes is this 5-year Treasury rate. So from April 9th, last week's meeting, at the close of business, that rate was a 4.37%. With that one inflation report, the next morning, that 5-year rate shot up to a 4.60%. So that just gives you an idea of the significance of what one event can do to interest rates. One thing I want to point out here is, despite your potential borrowing rate increasing, so we started at a 4.23 from TD. Now that's up to a 4.43. If you were to consider the FNB rate, that's a 4.45. So you're looking at a 20 basis point, potentially a 22 basis point increase in your borrowing rate. The blue line is the investment rate. So not only has your borrowing rate increased, but the investment rate has increased in lockstep. That has gone from a 4.74 up to a 4.97 today. So that's a 23 basis point increase on the investing side. So yes, you're paying more, but you're also receiving more money on the funds that you're investing. So it's not all bad news. You'd still be able to recoup that money on the investing side, if that makes sense. So 2 additional slides we threw in here just to give you an idea of what the debt service schedules would look like. We're focused in on the TD proposal and the FNB proposal. Slide 4 is the debt service schedule on the FNB proposal. Again, this is a 445 fixed. That is the rate. It's not going to change. And we've structured this to, if the far right column, your debt service would be about 2.2 million, just under 2.2 million, out through 2033, and then there would be a drop off in 2034. Again, this is not assuming capitalized interest at the moment. If you did not want that $517,000 payment in your 2025 budget, we can remove that, and that would go right to your project fund. Or we can include it. It would come out of your project fund. If you didn't want it and you wanted to make that payment, it'd be more money in your project fund. So either way, we can accommodate that. And then the last page would be what the TD debt service schedule would look like. That schedule, again, is based on a 440, because that's what it was when I left the office. After hours, I got it. It was a 443. So the last payment would be, if you scroll to page 5, please. This is what the TD Bank debt service schedule looks like. Again, a 440, so 443 would be a little bit higher. We would still keep your payment off to the right to be just under 2.2, so you wouldn't see any impact in your debt service through 2033, but you would see that payment in 2034 would increase. I just want to turn it over to Lauren or Garrett. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add to that? Okay. Okay. If not, I'm going to turn it over to Ben Reed to go through the bond resolution.
So if you're sick of numbers, I'll bore you with words now. No, I'll try to be brief. So again, bond counsel of the school district, happy to work with you. Part of what we do is drafting, the notice of proposed adoption of the resolution. We advertised that in the Patriot News last Thursday. It's a 3-day minimum advertising requirement before the resolution is considered for adoption. That was satisfied. At that time, we had to make available a copy of the resolution for public inspection in case someone wants to see what it looks like, and it was also made available to the school board members. And that resolution is the same resolution in front of you, which has blanks in it, because when there's a competitive lending process, even though there might be some discussion and deliberation prior to the voting meeting, we don't presume that the full deliberation has happened and that it's going to happen tonight. So there are still blanks there. So I'll give a quick overview of the resolution, and then as part of your deliberation, it would be, in addition to deciding on whether to adopt the resolution, it would be first deciding which proposal you'd like to be inserted, to have inserted into the resolution for formal adoption, which is permitted under the Local Government Unit Debt Act, the state borrowing statute. So we're allowed to do exactly this right now, which is deliberate, make amendments to the resolution, post first advertisement, and then what we would do is, if the resolution is adopted, advertise in the Patriot News notice of adoption, and it would highlight some of the changes from the resolution as originally submitted to being adopted. So this type of a resolution authorizes all steps needed to borrow the $15 million from filing paperwork with the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, which we would do in the next week or so. That second advertisement, and authorizing the signing of all documents. Of course, the security, so to speak, behind the loan is a pledge of the school district's full faith, credit, and taxing power. You're promising to budget every year to make the payments, and that goes with the territory. So that's a brief overview of the resolution. Now, it'd be appropriate to, as part of your deliberation, to weigh the proposals and perhaps insert, figuratively, the lender that you would like to go with, assuming you're in favor of adopting the resolution. And then what I would do is I would write this into the resolution send a final copy, printed copy to the school district tomorrow, and that would be deemed the final resolution with the lender and the proposal inserted. So happy to answer any questions.
If I may, if we could put the agenda back up, if I understand. So this motion F basically is the TD Bank indicative fixed rate, correct?
That is correct. I would need, we would need to change the motion. So we would need a motion to change the motion to read differently, and then a second of that, and then a voting on that item through roll call vote. Right now, I believe it's an open floor to discuss if there is any one of these lenders that is more enticing to take a vote on than anyone else, if I'm accurate in saying that, and then we would need to change the motion to render that. So it would be more of a vague, more of a adopting the resolution than the specific terms of a particular lender, if I'm accurate in saying that.
Following the deliberation, if the motion that could be entertained is swapping out some language at the end to say, let me back up. The blanks in the resolution, by adopting the resolution with the blanks filled in, you don't need to have a separate motion for the lender. It would be a motion to adopt the resolution, including selection of, or how did I have it worded earlier, including acceptance of a loan proposal from bank, fill in the blank, as presented during the district's, the presentation tonight by the district's financing team.
Personally, if you're looking for opinions, I'd like to table it and come back to it another time. I still think that we're borrowing $15 million of taxpayer money with no idea what we're going to do with it, and I think it's irresponsible.
Well, I want to ask the same a question regarding that. Just so I understand it myself, we basically need to give, what, $1.5 million or so to Cumberland Perry Area Vocational Technical Center, which we promised to do, which we could take out of our reserves. And then we also want to take, I don't know, 30, 40,000 or something to hire literal, what would you call them?
Probably look at a deeper facility study and hire an engineering firm that would be able
right.
to do that work
To do
for
some
us.
facility studies. So those are things I think, we voted on the tech school thing. We didn't vote on the engineers, but I think we'll probably head in that direction. So then is the point, if I understand it correctly, that because of the borrowing, because of the way the rates are, that if we would borrow a larger amount than we need, with the understanding that we would be able to invest that money and get a return on what we borrowed that would actually, by borrowing that money, we're actually making money. Is that a simple, correct way of saying that? And what are the odds of that not working? Can anyone answer that question?
Today's rates through Pliget were, for example, a 365-day rate was 5.27%. So we could invest the money at 5.27% and borrow at 4.43 or 4.45. A 270-day rate was 5.31. 240-day rate was 5.40. So they're all in that range.
And is that fixed or locked?
It's fixed, yes.
So to your question, Mr. Lehman, because I think it's a good question. Like, if we're able to borrow this money and we're able to pay the things we need to pay, and we actually are going to make money on the fact that we're borrowing it because we're guaranteed to invest it at a higher rate of investment than our rate of borrowing it, I struggle with this too, but how is that irresponsible to our taxpayers? Help me to understand.
So what is the call date?
If
There isn't
it
one
depends
according
on what bank of these summary of bank loan proposals, if you were to select one that has an anytime no penalty, The call date would be any time.
What is the call date of the one we're looking at?
Can you explain
that's
call
what we're
date for anyone who's
discussing
listening, what that means?
Well, they made a recommendation. Why we're not looking at the one they recommended first and then going to a different one if we want to change?
Well,
Sure, for illustrative
I mean, if we're just going to
purposes,
sit
let-
here and spin plates, we are going to be here till tomorrow.
The one that they're recommending has no call date.
Right.
That's the FMB, the bottom row. So the prepayment is at any time with no penalty.
So here we are once again. We're using not real words. We're using acronyms or whatever you call them. We're using FNB. So I had no idea where that bank was even on there the whole time he was talking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I had no idea what bank that was. I made this same speech about 16 years ago because when I got on the board, there was all these people that were in education. I was the only one that wasn't, and they talked in symbols the whole night. So at the end of the meeting, I had no idea what I was doing. Mike was there.
Phil, I'll say, FNB, First National Bank, what I took away from, from what Mr. Brockman said was when Dr. Pat asked if he had to make a recommendation, it would be FNB, 4.45. No prepayment penalty is how I would say that. As far as call date, the difference between call date and all that stuff. No prepayment penalty. We could take the money today, pay it back tomorrow. No issues. For me.
So what is the cost to borrow it today?
I think it's right there, bank counsel fee, $3,000, and there's probably some maybe additional things in there if you want to.
What is it? What do we pay you guys?
So yeah, the total cost of issuance, it was in our presentation last week. It's around $120,000 for all the professional fees, the bank fees. If you decided to utilize capitalized interest, it would be an additional $500,000. That is not a fee. That's set aside to make your first two payments. The number on the far right next to First National Bank's proposal, $18,798,075. That is the total payback over that 10-ish period of time at a 4.45% fixed.
Okay. So Mike, your answer is it's $625,000. How long does it take us to make that much in interest?
Phil, I don't know
If that's what it's costing us, because that number's wasn't even original. That $500,000 wasn't originally even in there.
Phil,
So it's costing us $625,000 to borrow the money.
Well, and that's what I want to know. Let's assume that is absolutely correct. If it's going to cost us, what, $650,000 to buy, if we're guaranteed to make $100,000, if we're guaranteed to make $100,000, then it's going to cost us $600,000, but we're going to come out $400,000 in the clear. I guess is my understanding of what I'm being assured.
Chester, could you quickly punch the numbers and see what the investment arbitrage would be on $15 million at 5.2 for 3 years?
Sure.
last week he showed a 5.11, but yeah, I think that would be helpful if you could. Phil,
Certainly.
last week, Mr. Holmes showed what we would gain in terms of income and compared that to what we would end up be paying in interest the first year to see whether you come out to the good, to your point.
So we're just doing 1 year, or we're going to do,
Well,
I heard two
but
different
last-
numbers. I heard 1 year, I heard 3 years.
Last week, he put out a 1 year because the rate that we were looking at last week was the TD Bank, which is the second one, that we could not pay off before 18 months.
Okay.
So we would have had to keep it at least and invest it for at least that amount of time.
Let's remember, it's only 13.5 million because we're using 1.5 of it.
Yeah, it was
And
all,
I believe
the
the
numbers were
investment-
all in there. That was all accounted for.
And I believe the
in
investment
ratios.
rates you're only talking about locking for 365 days, not because the rates go down the longer you go out, so.
Correct. So in the first year, investing at the 1 year fixed rate, the return would be $113,503 of the $120,000 cost to
So
borrow.
if we give that back, we're losing $500,000.
In 1 year.
Because no one is accounting for the interest we're paying up front that we're borrowing. So it's really 625,000, it's not 125,000. So if we give the money back after a year, we lost $500,000.
I just have one question, if I could.
Chester, go ahead.
That is not correct. So the idea of capitalizing the interest, we do not have to do that. And chances are we will not do that if we were to have the loan. So we're going to have, this is just the spread, the difference between our cost to borrow and our cost to invest. We would recover $113,503 in the first year. If we held beyond that, we still could continue to make money. I don't have a rate of what an investment beyond a year would be. Under the past borrowings for the district, you have not had the opportunity to gain any of the costs back of the loan. This is an opportunity to do that.
And I understand that, but I'm not in favor, first of all, borrowing $15 million that we don't know what we're going to do with. So that's my first problem. My second problem is now you're saying we don't need the $500,000. They came out, rolled out a plan that has the $500,000 in it. I don't think we're even talking to know what's going on here.
I think a long time back, though, we did initially talk about only borrowing about $10 million. The money for the CPA, CTC, and a solar project, and then somewhere it came out, let's borrow 15, because we could capitalize on the interest of it. But you know,
and I understand that. And if we had a plan of what we were doing with the 15 million, I could sit here and make a yes or no vote based on what we were doing with the money. Right now, we're going to borrow 15 million, and then we find out in a year that it doesn't make any sense to give it back because, I don't know, whatever, because we can't make money on it anymore and we don't have a project that we all can agree on. Then we've lost money, and we're at the same place we were when we started. We've been for 6 months trying to decide what to do with this money as a board and administration, and we have not been able to do that. So there's absolutely, in my opinion, no reason to borrow it.
well, and I could be wrong, but I believe in a year, if we don't do something within when a year's up, you know, we got to figure out what to do with the debt mills because we got a whole other issue on our hands. So I think that's a large part of this as well, and why we're having this conversation, because we don't. No point putting it off. We don't take care of it now. We're just kicking the can down to 1 year when that last debt payment is gone, and then what?
Okay. Go ahead. Could I have a shot at this? Okay. No, I just want to know, and this might sound really bizarre, but is there any way to sweeten the pot with this? I mean, do you guys have any latitude or leeway or anything for, say, the F&B bank? Is there anything that you can do to, I call it sweeten the pot? I mean, make it more desirable, or?
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at the presentation from last week, they were at a 4.77%. And as I mentioned, with the rates increases, rates have gone up 30 basis points. So even with that 30 basis point increase, they were able to lower their rate down to a 4.45. We asked if they could go any further based on some of the other rates that you're seeing on that screen. We even said, you know, maybe it makes sense to consider including a 12-month non-callable feature, or 18 months, similar to TD Bank, if you weren't planning on repaying that over the next 12 months or 18 months. And they said that the best they could offer is a 4.45 prepayable anytime.
All right, so like whatever a lot of times there's built-in fees that's what I'm wondering, if there's any modification that could possibly be done. I mean, how desperate are they to have us borrow the money from them versus, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's like, no, this is the price point and you take it or leave it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the secret sauce that goes into the rate, but they assured us that that's bare minimum. That's their best and final offer that they can put out.
Okay.
And TD Bank's proposal, once they gave us the 429 and then the 435, they started actually eating some of the costs behind the scenes, but it just got so high that they couldn't eat anymore, or they wouldn't even be making any money on it. So we've tried Webster Bank. We said if you can, do an 18-month or a 2-year non-call with that 4.29, that's looking pretty attractive now. But again, what you see on that screen is the best terms that they could get approved.
Okay, just figured I'd ask.
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
So I guess one good thing is there's no urgency for us to borrow this money if we don't have to. So then the question is how, I don't want to say volatile, I don't know if that's the right word, but how fluctuating is the market that if we waited on this and we do something a month later, 2 months later, tomorrow, like that, how do we, can someone advise us? Like, we don't have to do this right now. If there's a chance that it's going to change, maybe we do table it for that reason alone. I don't know.
I don't think there's any day where there's not a chance that it's going to change. You know what I mean? That's always going to be the case. So that argument today will be the same argument that will be valid in 6 months. So I'm not disagreeing with you in the least, but we literally will just be a hamster on the wheel.
As I mentioned earlier, based on all of the economic data out there, all the economic reports are suggesting inflation is sticking around. People are still paying higher prices. Rates are going to continue to stay where they're at, if not climb higher, for at least the next 6 months, because there's talk that there's going to be no rate cuts through the rest of the year. So unless, doesn't mean that rates aren't going to come down. There could be something that happens, like I said, with the tensions in the Middle East. That could happen. It could be significant, and rates could drop. No one can predict the future, but as I mentioned, all economic data out there is pointing towards higher rates. So waiting 3 months or 4 months, I don't know that rates are going to be any lower than where they're at right now.
Mr. Holmes. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, just one thing I wanted to point out as well in that vein of questioning is that we don't want to dip our toe in and out too many times. I would say if we do it again, we probably need to give it some time and only do it one more time. We can't keep going to the well, because eventually the list of banks will get shorter and shorter and less competitive, and because they might not take you as seriously next time if you don't. We do write into the proposal that the school district has the right to negotiate, accept, or decline all offers. So you have that ability, but we don't want to go to the well too many times, because eventually the well will dry up.
I think some of the questions that keep getting asked are, what are we going to use with the money? And the district has provided us with numerous times a 4-year facilities plan that is outlined, that we have been provided with as a board, that outlines what they would like to do 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26 for improvements to the district, the schools. Let's look at, and that's excluding an $8 million solar array. We're looking at upgrades to our bleachers. We're looking at pipe repairs. We're looking at concrete repair. We're looking at glass replacement in the elementary school, roof treatments, geothermal variable frequency drive replacement, which is at its end of life. We're looking at restroom improvements at the middle school, flooring at the middle school and elementary school, practice field site preparation. If we do not have this money that we're investing in, where are we getting the money from to do all of these things? And I think what has been said to me is, well, if we're planning on building a school in 10 years, why would we borrow the money now? But we can't continue to allow our buildings to degrade while our students are in them and not do these improvements. We have no idea what 10 years down the road holds. We have no idea what tomorrow holds, but we have to continue to maintain the buildings that our students are in now and provide now and maintain what we have now, because if we allow things to rupture and bleed, then we won't have the money to repair what we have. So this, yes, $15 million seems like a lot. It was a lot because we were considering solar array. I still think that's something that as a district we need to look at as a source to offset our electrical costs, even though we have found some replacements for that, but certainly as a way to start to improve some of these things within the district.
Mr. Holmes, I just have a quick question. So last week when you gave us that capital projects loan arbitrage Excel spreadsheet, maybe this would help to answer or alleviate some of Phil's concerns. Do you have, like that number that we had, which was the interest earned net spread, last week was $165,000. If you took off the $120,000 in the loan origination costs, it was a net of about $45,000 for that 1 year, that first year. How do those numbers with this new interest rate that has increased a bit change those? Do you have that, or are you able to give that?
I do. So if we took the 1 year at the 5.27%, our net spread is 82 basis points, and that would generate the $113,000 of additional revenue. If we took the 5.4%, we're at 98 basis points, and just over that 9-month period, we're going to get back the same $113,000. It's just that I can't predict what it's going to be beyond that. If you give me a number, I can certainly put it in and calculate what it would be. For example, if we made the 98 basis points for 8 months, and then we had excuse me, another 7 months at 50 basis points, we're looking at $158,500. So you're looking at a $40,000 addition to recouping the costs of 120 and having 40 left over after 18 months.
So just if I'm making sure I hear you correctly, where last week we were looking at a net difference that was going to bring us a 165 in the year, we would still have been $45,000 to the good after our loan origination costs. But what you're saying now is that we're only going to be bringing in 113, so we would not be to the good with the loan origination costs.
If you're okay with a 65 basis point spread after the 1 year, we are back up to the same numbers that we were. I was going conservative and playing with 50 basis points. So, you like to be conservative with your numbers and only what we can tangibly, have. The 1 year is all that I have right now as a tangible number. If I put that 65 basis points back in instead of going with 50 basis points,
So I think I see where you're going. So what I have here is 18 months, not just 1 year.
right.
Okay.
So if we did the 18 months, if we did the 9 months, and then we did another 7 beyond that, or 8 beyond that, I'm sorry, we'd be looking at $172,000. So, but it's beyond those points that I have that we have to put a number in. And
I just have one other question. I believe when you were here, not the last time, but the other time, it was pointed out that we had to spend a certain percentage of what we borrowed within a 3-year period. Can you talk more about that?
The school district, borrows for capital projects on a tax-exempt basis, and one of the jobs of bond counsel is to draft the loan documents, including a tax certificate, and give an opinion of counsel, that the interest on the loan is tax exempt and that you're going to meet all the requirements of the federal tax code and regulation. So one of the requirements is that the school district has to have a reasonable expectation that it's going to spend 85% of the net proceeds of the loan within 3 years. Now, the question just came up today with a school district that said, well, I'm up against the 3 years and we still have money. I got to spend it by June. And I reminded the school district that, you can have reasonable expectations, but they can change. Plus, it's 85%, not 100%. So that is the rule, 85% within 3 years. Reasonable expectation, not an actual test.
So what I just heard, well, I'll tell you what I think I just heard. So if we borrow $15 million, we should have a reasonable expectation of spending 85% of that $15 million within 3 years.
Correct.
Okay.
But
from a couple different perspectives, not to get too far into the weeds, but one is in order to be able to earn that arbitrage in 3 years, that's one prong of the test. The other prong is, or the other aspect is, in order to not be, borrowing to hedge. So it's a tax rule that you need to have that reasonable expectation.
And if we don't meet it, that's when we can prepay the loan back. Is that what you're saying? Will we still be underneath meeting those rules?
Correct. Anytime there's, the tax code uses the phrase, abusive devices. Anytime you're jeopardizing the integrity of the financing on a tax-exempt basis, the number one remedy is to pay the bonds, pay it back. But again, so the reasonable documentation is noted at the closing date, not necessarily tonight. So, so what happens is, if something were to happen down the road, the IRS would want to look at the loan transcript and look at, meeting minutes and just to have a sense of what the expectation was. Now, it's not a high threshold to meet in my experience. You know, the reasonable expectation. I mean, if you have defined projects and they have, you know, estimated construction periods and completion dates, then, I mean, that's the type of data that would be sufficient to meet that requirement.
One of the banks requested from us a list of projects. So we gave them the list of projects that were outlined that Ms. Walburn had noted, and they were fine with that.
But that does open up a can of worms, because if one of those listed projects was the solar array, I don't know that we've settled on that as a board. And I don't.
No, absolutely. You reserve the right to approve all capital projects and all expenses, period.
Right, I understand that too. What I'm saying is, are we misrepresenting the loan if that goes out there as a reasonable expectation of what we're gonna do with that money, when I don't know that that's been a settled reasonable expectation? I just wanna make sure that we're not, it's not.
So to borrow, to invest is not accept, if I understand correctly, to borrow the money, to invest the money, there needs to be an expectation or a plan to spend.
Yes.
85% of it in 2 years.
It's not a reasonable purpose to borrow just for the purpose of investing. Yeah.
But I think to the point is, to Mrs. Singley's point, we haven't settled on whether we're doing solar or not. And the longer we wait, if you look back at the Raymond and James presentation, the interest rate back in December when we were discussing solar, because we've been discussing this for eons now, was 4.1%. We're now looking at an interest rate of 4.45%. So in 4 months, the interest rate has gone up 3.5%. So we either borrow the money and we come to an agreement, or 0.35, sorry, listen. We either come to an agreement on what we are doing regarding solar array, but we have to borrow the money now, because the longer we wait to settle this, the higher the interest rates could go. We can't go on what ifs. We have to figure this out. Our indecisiveness is killing us, in essence. Like, our inability to make a decision, and the more we, in essence, kick this can down the road, the more it is hurting us as a board, and the more it is hurting our district.
But I do think we made, well, we haven't voted on it, but part of the reason we're borrowing is so we can hire engineers to decide if we're going to build or not. It would be irresponsible to put solar arrays all over this district whenever we might be building in 10 years. So I think the decision that needs to be made first before we do most anything is whether or not we're going to be building. Because if we're going to be building, it doesn't make sense to be investing in buildings where the pipes might last 10 years, or to put bleachers in buildings, or put other things in buildings that are going to be torn down and replaced in 10 years, or to put solar panels all over our property when we might need that property to build. So I think Dr. Fox's point of using some of this money to hire an engineer, we can't make, in my opinion, I can't make any of those decisions until I know if our future has a building in place or not.
Maybe I missed a meeting or I'm just lost, but I personally didn't remember where the building of a building came out of. We were talking about a solar project and the CPA-CTC meeting, money, and then we went to, all of a sudden, do we need to build a middle school? And I was wondering why we even targeted middle school, because that's the newest of all the buildings. So, you know what I mean? To keep saying that we're potentially hiring an engineering firm or going back to Crabtree Rohrbauer, facilities improvement plans and all these other things, I'm not sure where that came from. My personal opinion was I thought the money was for solar array, for CPA, CTC, and then the list that's over here, bleachers, roof repairs, HVAC issues, et cetera, et cetera. So
I will certainly speak to all of those items. Yes to all of them. We've discussed in length, starting back in August of last year, where I was asked to produce a capital plan. I used our feasibility study from Crabtree and Rohrbaugh, who came in and did an enrollment and feasibility study that lasted an entire year. They studied every aspect of the building and provided us with an MEP plan, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. I used that to help design a facilities plan, at which time it's laid out with pictures and with rough pricing. We also then, they showcase different options when it comes to different buildings. The elementary school was one that was targeted the most because it didn't have, at the time, some classrooms did not have a light and access, as well as a large enough gymnasium or a facility large enough to host the entire school. We also then discussed some of the, I would say, building envelope needs as we continued to look throughout the buildings and see different building envelope needs and discuss what would it cost and look like as we began to look through those on a long-term facilities plan. We also put together a secondary facilities plan that also looked longer term at the overall facilities that you will see located here that you received. It also has in there replacements that include but not limited to gym floors because they have a life expectancy, geothermal well pumps, boiler replacements, bleacher replacements, areas for staging at the auditorium, bathroom remodels, roof coatings, EFIS maintenance, or however you say that, I'm sorry, dry vent, eventual turf replacement, and track resurfacing, all facilities life expectancy that needs to occur. What we discussed thereafter is some of these, if we were, what would it look like if we eventually will need to build a new building? Possibly, because there's a life expectancy of everything. Then we said, what if we got an engineer or received and hired or procured an engineer to come in and look at where that would be in a layout of our campus? From there, then we can talk and discuss further what other sites would be available for a solar array. From there, then we said, I cannot just look at the sun and determine where an array and panels may be. We need to have that engineer do a soil composition and a solar shade study to determine if that's the best place to place a solar array and what percentage would that be then yielding us in terms of a megawatt system, and what would that look like in terms of a return on that investment. All of those things are still low-hanging fruit that we need in terms of hiring somebody professionally that works for the school district to do those. I can devise, and we can devise, good plans. So can our outstanding Director of Buildings and Grounds. He knows these facilities well. But when it comes to that professional engineering look and oversight, overlay, size, layout, schematic, where could a building go, where couldn't it, for a long-term plan. I'm not saying in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years. That is up to you. But knowing and preserving and protecting property of where that could be is certainly, I think, a wise and prudent move of all of us. And that will certainly outlast me. But a place where that could go for the life expectancy, certainly, of Susquenita School District. So I think that's how some of these conversations begin to ebb and flow. And trust me, they're great conversations to have. They're great conversations. And when you look and we start to go back over the 24-25 budget, you will not see a lot of maintenance and facilities areas within the budget. There are no capital improvements in this budget. The only capital improvement in the budget is a discussion of 418 Schoolhouse Road for either repairing of it or removing of it. And that could be removed at your discretion. That's the only one. So that's kind of how this ebb and flows. Do we need a solid plan? Yes. But I would like to see a very comprehensive facilities plan to take a really hard and deep look at what does our M&P look like. For somebody different to come in and look at that. Look at everything. Study it. And those studies are not $1,200. They are probably in a range between 15 to 20, if not more. I'm not sure. Go ahead, Dr. Gutile, I'm sorry.
Just a thought. I mean, I don't know if you've looked at this or not since I'm sort of new to the board. As far as, since there are many, I just went to the PSATS convention in Hershey, so there were 2,000 people there, obviously including a lot of vendors. A lot of the vendors that were there were engineering firms, Ritu and many others. I don't know, is that something, have you looked at or even gotten any kind of a price point or even ventured into that arena at all with what might be out there as far as different engineering firms and kind of, basically finding out what their fees would be?
I have not ventured into that market to get what fees would be from a professional engineer and a firm. I think the first thing is to see where we are going to get those funds from, because they are not in the general fund. They are not in the 24-25 budget, and we do have a limited capital fund balance that's remaining. So I think part of the plan, certainly the discussion mode that we have had with keeping our run rate, keeping our debt mills in place, investing into this funds, allows us then, through a really interesting time frame when it comes to the interest rate that you invest or borrow versus the interest rate that you can invest, and having the ability to have it be callable or pay it back at any time without a penalty is a pretty neat tool to have in our financial tool belt. When we look at our overall debt, I think you should be very proud of your overall debt as a board. It is a very nice debt portfolio to have, and it's a financial tool. And you as a board, historically over the many years, have done a great job of managing that.
I think your recap was great. I think where I'm having a little bit of concern is Jonathan's interpretation of what this loan was going to be used for is very different than mine. I did not think we were putting a solar array in. I didn't think that this money was going to be used for that. I was not a real fan of borrowing the $15 million, kind of where Phil was. Wasn't sure what we were earmarking that for, up to $15 million, but was sold on the fact that, yeah, we can arbitrage this money at least for 3 years, pay it back. I'm a little concerned about the whole reasonableness of the loan and what we're laying it out for, and I'm more concerned that if we have the money, we'll just spend it. Because we have it, we'll just spend it. Maybe that's where Phil's concerns are as well. So I think, I don't...
Do you, as a board, and again, do you... Yeah, well, absolutely. You have that mechanism to control because you approve anything that comes forward. I can sit here and wholeheartedly tell you there are $15 million worth of projects that need to be occurred in this district. Absolutely. Do I know exactly? I'm not good when it comes to. I gave you a rough estimate of some of them in several facilities, long-term facilities plans, but yes, there are $15 million worth of projects in this district to improve our facilities.
And I will say that my interpretation of the money is likely different than yours because I feel like I've been in favor of the solar project, right? So I would say lay out the $8 million to do the solar project, and then we use the rest for other things where I'm not certain that you were. So.
And mine is totally different too, because I have to agree with Jonathan on the fact that I would be voting for the $15 million if we were doing the solar array already, and we were only borrowing $7 million to do the projects in the school, because then I could see where they were going to go, and I could see that we could probably agree on spending those. Currently, right now, my major problem is that the study that we got done was not anywhere near what we expected we were getting when we paid for it. They basically were coming in here trying to figure out how they were going to have us spend $400 million to build new schools and to build add-ons to schools and build some room up here that we're not sure how that was even going to fit in there, that this was going to be the best thing that ever happened for $150,000, so I'm not really sure. That is where we fell short. So my recommendation would be we table this borrowing the money of tonight, put $40,000 in the budget to get the study done in 2025 correctly. And I'm sure that most people here can agree with me, the interest rates a year from now are not going to be this high.
I would agree. I think I would agree. What it sounds like is we've been toying with a lot of things, the solar array, all the stuff on this list. But and I believe it was Dr. Fox who suggested perhaps we need to build a new middle school, high school, whatever. So.
Oh yeah, I absolutely threw that idea out there during discussions.
And I trust your vision with that, and that was the first that I had heard that, because I agree, the company that we brought in, I don't want to use the word worthless, but I'm going to use,
But
what they told us, they were talking elementary. I guess my point is, it seems like before we do anything with our property, with the solar array or any of those things, we need to have a very clear vision if we're going to be building or not, or where we're going. And it sounds like we need professionals to do that study. So I guess I'm just echoing that to say I agree with Phil.
And just correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't pay the other organization or a firm $45,000 to do that. That was a much
No,
lower.
I believe it was like $1,500
that's-
or some sort.
right.
I think you might be right, somewhere in that range. And I don't want to disparage them by any means. I think for us, if I remember correctly, one of the main components we wanted of that study was to look at the enrollment. Because we saw PDE's enrollment, but PDE's enrollment projections took into account COVID-19. And at that point, they weren't realistic numbers. So that firm came in and provided us an enrollment study, and they used a different model and forecast a different model. And during that time, it really allowed us to show that we're okay capacity-wise in the size of our buildings. So that was a key component, and I don't want to disparage them by any means. But then they did some redesign with some of the visioning exercises with some members of our team. And it was interesting because you always look at deficiencies. You know, any principal can tell you deficiencies of a building. We can tell you deficiencies of a building, and then it was designed around those deficiencies. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's a building envelope, an MEP, or a facilities issue. That means we can use spaces differently, and how can we creatively use spaces differently. For us, that enrollment piece was critical and crucial because we were wondering if developments would impact our overall enrollment, if I remember correctly. And at that point, the study that I believe I shared back out, and I can again, showed that we're going to be pretty much okay and level. There'll be a couple dips as you look at certain classes. That happens. But we're okay based on that study.
So if we're looking at the choice of either tabling or moving forward, kind of listing the pros and cons, maybe kind of recapping a little, if we table it, then we have to close out sort of this RFP. Is that what we're looking at doing then? That we would not be able to use any of these bid numbers that we got. And if we were to come back in 6 months, we would be dipping our toes in the water and maybe getting not as favorable responses, perhaps. On the flip side, if we borrow the money, we do need to borrow, or we think, I guess we don't have to, but we have at least the $1.5 million that we have to give to CTC. Yeah, those letters that we have to do for that. And we do know that there are some things for certain, several $1 million worth of capital improvements that we need to do beyond, that are within the short term, whether we build or not. So we either table or we move forward, and as long as we're not giving ourselves an equal bum rap for laying out what we think we're going to spend it on, arbitraging it, saying, oh, sorry, we were just kidding, and then we'd pay it back. If that's not, is that going to affect our reputation with lenders at all? Maybe that's kind of a question for.
These folks might be in a better. We'll let your numbers professionals respond to that.
So just so I'm understanding your question correctly, you're saying if you were to move forward, borrow the 15, spend $1.4 million for the CTC project and maybe a little more for other projects, and then decide you don't need the rest and pay it back, does that affect your reputation amongst lenders in the future? If you were to
Yes,
come back?
because we would have had to, and even for the bond, like we have to list out what our reasonable expectations are for spending, and then we don't do it.
Right.
Is there any downside to that?
No, I would say amongst the lending community, there is no harm to your reputation if you were to go down that path, because the lenders are relying upon bond counsel's opinion that your borrowing is a legally tax exempt under the IRS code instrument. And so while one of the borrowers asked for that list of projects, I'm not really sure why they did, because at the end of the day, bond counsel is going to deliver that tax opinion, and that's what they ultimately rely upon. Truth be told, they don't really care, for the ones that said prepayable anytime without penalty, they don't really care when they get their money back from you. Because at the end of the day, they are hedging on the other side of that lending investment. So when that money comes back in, now they can lend it out somewhere else depending on where interest rates have gone. So it's a good question, but no, that does not affect your kind of notoriety or lack thereof within the lending community.
And similarly with bond counsel, no, is that an issue on your end, or?
No, in terms of paying it back or going back out for.
And just stating what we're saying is what we're intending to spend it on, and then saying in 3 years, yeah, we decide not to do that. Like, does that?
Well, frankly, I don't think we see that very often at all.
Okay.
It's permissible, and I mean it's accounted for in the documents. You're allowed to pay the money back if you're not using the money for what you intended to use it for. You need to pay it back. You can't just keep it and we earned arbitrage and that's nice, and so the remedy is to pay it back.
Okay.
But I would, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know you will, oftentimes that list of projects will change from the time that you borrow the money until you expend it. And as long as it is a permissible investment under the initially authorizing resolution and under the Internal Revenue Code, then that's okay. So, if you said in the initial list of projects that you had a $7 million solar project, but that you ultimately decided that you had $7 million you wanted to spend elsewhere, that's completely allowable within the resolution that your bond counsel wrote up tonight and within what's legally allowed by the Internal Revenue Code. And we see that happen often because those lists of projects are just that. They are a reasonable expectation. They haven't all been vetted and thoroughly voted upon yet by boards, because the code gives you leeway on when you can borrow, because they know that things do change over time. Bids change, priorities change, things need to shift, and it's a liquid situation.
Okay, thank you. I think based on that, I will make or say my thought where I'm at with this. I think the risk versus benefits on what they've laid out to me is that tabling this now would not be the best move. I think we need to move forward now in the loan. But that being said, I would definitely want to look at the First National Bank or something similar that does not have a penalty at any time, that there's no callable time frame that we have to, given the volatility of the market.
All right, and before.
Go ahead, you first.
Can someone explain to me why he says there's $500,000 so we don't make any payments until our other bond wise out, and you say there's not? I want to know where that $500,000 is.
The capitalization of interest was an option that was presented to us, and initially we considered that. However, realizing that we're going to be bringing in revenue from this money that we're investing, we would certainly have more than enough to make those payments. So we had indicated that we did not want to capitalize the interest. So we would not be capitalizing interest. We would be earning interest on $15 million at approximately 5.27 to 5.4%. We would be paying interest at 4.45%, so the net effect would be a positive. So capitalization was a possibility, but I think we've decided that it's not something we would want to do.
So those $500,000 payments were until the old loan was paid off. And now you're not going to do that because you can guarantee that we're going to make $113,000 in a year. But what if we don't have a project by next year at this time and interest rates are 4% that you can get? A year from now, 3 or 4 Fed rate cuts. I know we're not going to see any probably in the next 6 months, but if we get a couple cuts at the end of the year and a couple of cuts in the spring, your interest rate that you can get a year from now could be 4%.
And then we would pay back the loan.
So then we spend
After-
$125,000 for no reason.
You spent $125,000 that you were able to earn a return on to lessen that amount. At no other time in the last 15 years have you borrowed money and had the opportunity to get back any of those loan origination costs.
And I totally understand that, but at no point in time, any other time in the school district's history, have we borrowed money with no idea what we're going to do with it.
Well, we do have some idea, maybe not all 15 million agreed, but there is some idea. But why again last week? Because we were in the same sort of difference in the interest earned versus interest paid. Why last week were we looking at capitalizing and not this week?
I was not looking at capitalizing the interest last week.
Okay.
That's just an option that was put out there, and we just don't have the documents that reflect that. But I see no need for us to capitalize the interest because while it's not in our budget, we can certainly add it as a revenue line item for interest income and also add it as an expense for interest expense. So the net of that would be a positive.
So you feel, at least in the current environment, that we would have for the first year, the overlapping year of our current debt service and the first year of this one, that we would have enough money to pay those interest, that we wouldn't have to add any more burden on our budget.
Correct.
Phil, earlier you said something that honestly, I've been waiting to chime in and say that I'm not sure I agree with. I think you said that probably everybody here would agree with you that a year from now the rates won't be this high. And I'm not sure I agree with that because with inflation and everything else, I don't see anything going down in price. So in the interest of time, I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to amend 7F to be a motion to approve a resolution authorizing and directing the issuance of a general obligation note series of 2024 in the maximum principal amount of $15 million for the purpose of financing various capital projects of the school district, including acceptance of the loan proposal as presented tonight by the district's financing team. And actually, I'm going to add at the very end of that, with no prepayment penalty.
Do you want to mention specifically the particular bank we're talking about?
I honestly, I'm comfortable doing that. I don't think we really wanted to initially, but do we have any guidance on that? Is that?
I think it should be clear which proposal you're including in the motion for adopting the resolution.
Okay, so then I'm going to withdraw what I previously said, and I'll restate. I'm going to amend 7F to be, I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing and directing the issuance of a general obligation note series of 2024 in the maximum principal amount of $15 million for the purpose of financing various capital projects of the school district, including acceptance of the loan proposal from the First National Bank at a fixed rate of 4.45% with no prepayment penalty at any time.
Second.
So moved.
I actually.
You already moved. All right.
I made the motion, I'm sorry, and he seconded. I'm afraid to ask, but is there any discussion?
Are we, and we are also going to go with generating some income and to offset? Is that what? I mean,
Yes.
This
Yeah,
is
that
part
was-
of the discussion.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yes, of course.
And we're calling this for the First National Bank? That's the one we're proposing?
Yes, that
Okay.
was part of the motion. Yep,
All right,
First
okay, I
National
just wanna
Bank, yep.
make Crystal clear. No, it's
Yep,
too
no.
bad she's not here because she would be
Oh,
thrilled.
crap, where'd she go?
She went to the ladies' room. Want to wait?
Well, we're going to have to wait, but I'll ask again. Any further discussion? Mike, you got anything you want to talk about?
I'd like you to sing a tune for us, please.
That's not going to happen. Miss Walburn. Miss Walburn. All right, I had a motion and a second. At this time, Dee, can you please take a roll call vote?
What did we decide?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, can
Ms.
we have the
Walburn,
whole
would you
thing
like me to-
restated again, because you've said about 5,000 words now.
Okay. The motion again that I am making is a motion to approve a resolution authorizing and directing the issuance of a general obligation note, series of 2024, in the maximum principal amount of $15 million for the purpose of financing various capital projects of the school district, including acceptance of the loan proposal from the First National Bank at a rate of 4.45% fixed with no prepayment penalty at any time.
And we're not capitalizing the interest. That changes everybody's votes by $500,000.
It's not
I don't,
necessary.
I
that
don't
it be
believe
in
that's
the
a
motion.
resolution issue, correct? That's an administrative
Well, the
discussion.
resolution, as drafted, authorizes that to happen. It doesn't direct that it happen.
I think the
So
only.
that means that all of us are going to vote on the possibility that the school district could borrow another $500,000 to pay in capital interest payments, is what we're allowing them to do right now. Just so I want to make sure everybody understands that.
Well, should we make that clarification that that's excluding that, or?
Why are you saying that, Phil? Why is?
If he does the capitalization payments, that means we won't have to make a payment on the loan until our other loan is up. So we're going to borrow that $500,000 to make all those payments. So that's why his number was off by $500,000 or $700,000 for you from the other night. But if we don't tell them they can't do it, they still could change their mind, and then we're borrowing another $500,000 more than what we're agreeing to tonight.
No, it's still $15 million loan.
Yeah, it's still a $15 million loan, whether you use Cap I or not. If you utilize it, it'll be set aside in a separate fund, which would be used to make those payments. If you don't want to use capitalized interest, it just goes to the project funds, and it's more proceeds that you would receive at settlement.
Then why did these numbers change by $500,000 since last week?
Because originally we said that, or we were told that there was no line item in the budget for this project. So we utilized capitalized interest, so there would be no payment in 2025, which many issuers across the state take advantage of. You don't have to make that decision now. It's not going to change the documents, right? Because the resolution says you have the option of utilizing capitalized interest. So originally I showed it with the Cap I. After speaking with Chester, we decided that you weren't in favor of that, so I took it out for this presentation.
But they would have the option to make us owe $500,000 more. So we would owe it on the back end, not on the front end. If they capitalize it, then why is there a $500,000 swing then?
Because last week their line total was a net debt service number, and this week it's showing the total debt service. So they netted out.
So if they decide to capitalize it, then they're going to make the payments with that $15 million. So we're going to lose $500,000 out of the $15 million.
Correct. Yes.
So then we're not going to be level with the interest. We're going to be losing $500,000.
It depends when we make the payment.
I want to make it so they can't make that decision.
I think
I want to make that decision for them, or we're giving them the option to do whatever they want with $500,000.
At the expense of stating another 1,000 words, I can
can we do
change the
that?
motion again.
Just
clarify.
So in terms of this
Yes, we
resolution,
would,
though, this is only giving them the resolution to enter into this loan. Can't we still address that later on regarding the Cap I?
No, he said in the agreement it gives the administration the permission to decide what to do.
If I can jump in real quick. What we can do right now, if that's the wish of the board, is to remove that as an authorized purpose from the resolution. And if it's not in the resolution, then you can't use $500,000 for capitalized interest. You wouldn't have the flexibility to add it back in, but we can, adopt the resolution as amended, removing that use of bond proceeds for capitalized interest as a purpose. I mean, we could remove the ability for the school district to use it for that purpose by striking it from the resolution that you're adopting. That's an option.
Well, that also brings up another point. So on the way you worded this, Jonathan, you said about for the purpose of financing various capital projects, right? So that's the wording that we have there, but we are going to be using this for CPCTC. So does that fall? I don't know if you guys heard that or not. Okay, so on here you've listed under the resolution that the $15 million for the purpose of financing various capital projects. Will that wording encompass the amount of money that we're going to CPCTC, since that is not a capital project for us?
It is a capital project for us, correct, because of the resolution we just signed or we just authorized and passed, which gives us a portion of that joint resolution, and that resolution that we are now a part of the project for Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center. Plus, early on, I think it was last August, we pledged that we're a part of that construction project, and by the binding articles of agreement, we are a part of that project. So that debt is shared because a career and tech center cannot incur debt itself. Therefore, we're a part of that authority to be able to have that. So yes, I won't speak for legal, but I believe that is a capital improvement project that we can use those funds for.
Sounds acceptable to me.
Okay, and so now in light of that then, since you've specifically stated that the purpose is for financing various capital projects, does that wording alone then exclude us at this juncture from using it to finance the capital, or to the $500,000, the capital interest?
Well, that's the caption in the resolution. If you go further in the body of the resolution, it specifically defines to finance various capital projects, to fund a deposit to a capitalized interest fund, and to pay costs of issuance. So that's the language that would be stricken if that was the desire of the board, to strike the use of bond proceeds for capitalized interest.
Okay, so then I hear you, so does that mean we have to word this the way that he's wording it in theirs? Your resolution, Jonathan, that you just worded, was worded the way it is here, which is only stating for capital projects.
Or can you
Pretty
just
sure the
add
motion
that?
as stated here is to authorize the resolution that he has over there, correct? Or
That is
not?
correct.
Right, so, like, what,
I mean,
yeah,
I mean,
correct, right.
Okay.
So you're just going to strike that portion of it out or something? Is that what you're going to do? Let's see it done, come on.
if
come
that's
on.
the version of the resolution that you want to have that motion apply to right now, we can strike that from the resolution, and it would not appear in your final resolution when it's sent to you tomorrow.
Does that make anybody happy here or not? Or is there something more? I said, does that make everybody happy here if they strike that line, since that seems to be the bone of contention?
It does me, because I also I'm not concerned that it would be an issue in the first
okay.
place.
But I'm just
So,
saying, make
yes.
everybody all warm and fuzzy about it. Does that make sense for him to do that?
I'm sold.
Okay.
Yeah,
Highest
it's
bidder.
others.
Okay,
That
good.
we have to make sure everybody else is in
Yeah.
line. If everybody else is happy, then my motion as stated still stands.
Okay.
But it was restated, I think, 3 times.
Right.
And I didn't get a second yet.
Second, how's that? Oh,
The
there you
third
go.
time? I don't think you did. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And how soon are we going to get the money is the question now, so we can get some interest on this thing.
I believe closing is scheduled for May 22nd.
Okay.
So just not to belabor this any longer, but do we need to have the wording in there for the purpose of financing various capital projects? Like, I feel like I'm approving a resolution to approve a resolution, and if we're approving this resolution, which is his wording anyway, why is this stating less than what the resolution that his says? Why do we have to have that in there? Why can't we just say in the maximum principal amount of $15 million?
I mean, that would be sufficient. I mean, there's no, rhyme or reason as to how exactly motions are worded. It could be it could be shorter and more simple. It could be longer. I see school districts that will put the whole caption as the motion, and that seems excessive. It doesn't affect in any way the validity of the action, and what you'll have tomorrow is a signed, well, once it's signed, formally signed, copy of the resolution that reflects the action taken tonight, and that will be the ultimate record of your action, not the motion that was approved.
So, sorry, one more question. So, can you lock in that interest rate of 5% today for some money you don't have until May 22nd?
No.
And from you guys up there, what happens if war breaks out in the Middle East and the bond market goes way up? What happens to interest rates? I mean, and the bond market comes way down, what happens to interest rates? So we're taking a chance, because Israel is going to respond, that by May 22nd, we could be at war and we could be getting less money.
All right, I'm going to deviate from the plan here momentarily and give public a chance to comment.
Phil, I hear what you're saying. You might as well take the arbitrage off the table. We talked about a football field in this district in December of 22, and by spring of 23, it was being built. We talked about possibly needing $15 million 2 months ago or less. We're talking about borrowing the money tonight. He has a list of tens of millions of dollars of projects. All $15 million of that, I guarantee you, will be consumed in the buildings tomorrow. Scott has a list of projects a mile long. I have no expectation that any of this money you're borrowing is going to gain any interest. You're gaining zero. Right off the top, you're taking $1.5 million, give it to Cumberland Perry. So you've talked about $15 million of interest arbitrage. It's not even a real number. It's $13.5 million, right? Right off the top. Nobody has said one word about that tonight. Then you're talking about, we know we need bleachers. We know we need a ton of other stuff in these buildings. Millions start coming off. There is no real expectation as a taxpayer that I'm getting any of that money back. You might as well borrow the money, fix the buildings, because 10 years from now, you're going to have 10 years worth of new students here. Half of us in this room may not even live in the district anymore. I sure as hell hope I'm retired. And I don't know if I'll still live on Newport Road. It's a beautiful home, but that's 10 years away. The buildings are falling apart today. You might as well borrow the money, take it at 4.45, and start fixing stuff. It is needed. And I'm okay with that as a taxpayer. So please pass the motion. Please authorize them to borrow the money and start fixing stuff. Don't worry about the interest. It ain't coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'm comfortable with the motion I made, and I did have a second, and thank you again for clarifying and all that, that everything is good here. At this point, I'm going to ask Dee for a roll call vote on this.
Mrs. Walborn? Yes. Mr. Lehman?
No.
Dr. Cattile?
Yes.
Mrs. Rabin?
Yes.
Mrs. Singway?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all of your time tonight. Appreciate it. I'm going to wait for 2 minutes here till Dr. Jones comes back. All right, next up, I need a motion to approve Personnel Matters 8A through H.
So moved.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next up, I need a motion to waive Board Policy 339, uncompensated leave for Carol Howe from April 11th, 2024 to May 6th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next up, I need a motion to approve the listed teachers there for the STEAM Adventure Camp.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next up, I need a motion to approve the listed teachers for the Early Birds Kindergarten Camp.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next up, I need a motion to approve the first reading of Policy 239, exchange students.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next up, I need a motion to approve the Board Discipline Committee's recommendation for students 061611, student 061611, student 032711, and student 112010.
So moved.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right. CPA, CTC, there's a lot going on there. Unfortunately, I missed the last meeting because I was at work. Facilities project updates, just all that's moving along, bids and whatnot coming in. And they had a bunch of students recently participate in, what would we call those?
Well, there's two things going on. I think there was Skills USA that was going on, and they did incredible in the Skills USA where they demonstrated what they've learned so far. And then they're preparing for the NOCD exam that should be coming up here in a few weeks.
Thank you. Thank you. Blackhawk Foundation, Dr. Fox.
Sure. Lots happening with the Blackhawk Foundation as well as really the foundation is gearing up for its big spring summer fundraiser, which is the golf outing. And definitely looking for some opportunities for the golfers and looking for golfers to showcase their skills. So there'll be a couple of different challenges I think that will be done by the foundation to try to encourage some continued fun throughout. So we continue to look for sponsors. So if there's anybody out there that's listening and has a small business that would like to advertise their business and be a part, we're certainly looking for sponsors. So you can reach out to the foundation through their website or contact myself or anybody here, and we'll route you in the right direction. And it's time to get 3 additional friends and start to register for the golf outing. Should be some good times, and I believe it's July 28th. June 28th, sorry. Oh, I better change my calendar. It's June 28th, so it should be coming up. So everything from super competitive versus somebody like myself. It's a scramble, so bring a few additional friends and have a good time.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Dr. Jones was distracting me.
No worries.
Oh, my God. All right. Meeting schedules listed there. Policy Committee meeting May 7th, caucus meeting May 7th, regular school board meeting May 14th. Any administrators wishing to provide anything at this time? Dr. Fox?
No, not at this time. I thank you to the board for an incredible, really, all the work that you do. The questions that you ask, the deliberations that you do, I think are important for all of us to bounce different ideas off of each other. Because everything that we do has a full-time investment in the, not just in year one, but a full-time investment in future years down the road. And everything that we do is done in the lens and the best interest, certainly of our students, and then those students in the future. So thank you for all you do. And speaking of students, we want to wish all of our students a strong finish to this school year. I mean, it's hard to believe. We are coming down the home stretch of that last 100 meters, and we certainly want them to put a big finishing kick on. There is an incredible amount of events and happenings. So we encourage you all to really pay close attention when our principals at each building send out some of those important notices and those newsletters. So really pay please close attention to all of those. And as well as our athletic director continually updates, because spring weather unfortunately hasn't been the greatest, and it feels like we're compounding games and events on games and events. And we're also coming on PSSA and Keystone exam testing window. I know that's not the most fun, certainly, but I ask that parents and guardians and our students take a couple of moments and talk about just doing your very best on these assessments. Much like we ask our students, you know, when it comes to the court or the track or the performance on the stage, that we do our best as Blackhawks no matter what's in front of us. And the outcomes will be good based on that effort and that level of effort. So we ask that you take it seriously. Our teachers have done a great job of preparing you by ensuring that those content standards are being addressed. And we're confident that anything in front of you, you'll do your very best. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. This time, are there any board members wishing to provide any reports or comments? All right. And next up, we have some time reserved to continue our budget discussions.
So I did prepare a few slides to showcase and share with you. Certainly I can share those and show those, and I think just for some overview and some illustrative purposes. So everything I share right now is some high-level illustrative purposes to go over some numbers. One of the things we continue to present to you when we look at revenue is with an Act 1 adjusted tax increase, and that's 7.2%. So I want to show a little bit of what that might look like, illustrative purposes, for Perry County, and what that might look like in Dauphin County. Keep in mind, and I'll show, and we'll demonstrate, one of the key and critical elements of that is STEB. STEB is going to play out the State Tax Equalization Bureau when you have a multi-county, because as one, the higher rate of assessed values, the other one goes up and down, depending, and that, of course, is the formula set by the State Tax Equalization Bureau. So again, anytime we start, we always like to look at our mission statement. That continues to be our driving force of what we do. You know, again, our budget goals, we've said this from day one, we continue, is to make sure and do our best that we can enhance and maintain our curriculum offerings for students. We want to maintain and enhance our facilities, and we want to work to provide a budget that is fiscally responsible for everybody. Our budget approaches for 24-25 is we started with a zero-based budget. So we kind of started from scratch. We didn't roll over. We talked and discussed as an administrative team, and our teachers have done a great job of what do you need in order to be able to deliver the curriculum. We reviewed expenses from previous years, to determine more actual expenses and program costs, and we continue to align with instructional goals to be able to deliver our curriculum. I think you've done a great job of looking at what the business office has done an awesome job of building, a very intuitive format at which you're able to drive in by object, code, and function, which I think will serve as a great tool and mechanism as we move forward for comparative analysis and for deeper analysis as to what a particular program may cost us and the cost to be able to operate. A lot of work certainly went into that, and we are now at meeting 4, as we had 3 subsequent budget meetings, at which time we took area by area, object by area, and function by function. And we were able to accomplish and go over all of those areas, which we finished up last week at caucus. Again, you're going to hear me, and I'm going to talk about this to length. Cyber charter school payments continue to be a budget constraint. I am not sitting here right now saying cyber charters are a bad option. That's not what I'm saying. I'm going to tell you right now that it's a flawed funding formula. That funding formula has not been touched, I believe, since 1994. I could be wrong in the exact date, but it's a flawed formula. It's a formula that's costing taxpayers a tremendous amount of money. It's a formula that's costing taxpayers twice, based on what we have in the budget, and again for payments. There is relief that's out there right now with a House bill. That House Bill 1422 keeps cyber charter schools and payments by public schools still in play. But it level platforms that, and it doesn't make it variable adjusting based upon a very archaic formula. It flatlines it at $8,000. Would be an incredible tax relief for us as a school district. Number two, special education. Special education continues. The cost to educate is a responsibility that we have and we take seriously. It's a cost that under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or effectively known as IDEA, when that law was passed by the federal government, it was to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, fully funded. And we haven't gotten close to fully funded. Our utilities continue to rise. I'm sure, like many of our utilities and my own private utilities, electricity is variable, liquid propane, and gasoline, because we do have gasoline not only just here, but we look at the diesel and the fuel that's also needed to include in our contract with our buses. Salary, benefits, and PSERs. And just like all of us, inflationary costs. This is from the state report that came out and produced by PSBA, which is a fascinating, and I love certain charts, and I believe I've shown this one before. The bottom of the dark blue shows enrollment, and this is 501 school districts plus throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Enrollment in the cyber charter is actually dipping, but costs continue to rise. Let me ask you this. How would you feel as a school district if we had our own lobbyist? We wouldn't be able to. But yet a public school who's a cyber charter, who touts themselves as a public school, is allowed to have that. The next slide shows special education expenses outpace revenue, sorry. The red shows state funding. The blue shows instructional expenses, and the black shows special education support expenses. I love graphics like this because it really kind of illustrates, and this is not just an us Susquenita issue, this is across the board. This is all school boards that have looked and helped and participated in some of these studies across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So when we look at our overview of estimated budget expenses, when we took a look at all those objects and function codes, we're at $39,012,562. A footnote here is we did in our last discussions, it's important to note that special education cyber charter is now included. That was an inadvertent omission from before, so it's now added into this, which that's why there's going to be a little bit of a driving cost upwards here.
Can I ask you what the number was?
$1 million?
It was $1 million.
Yep, we stayed constant with that because, again, it could be very variable for students, and we wanted to protect that. We kind of discussed different rates, but we kept that back in for that particular purpose.
Do we have that overall budget with that reflected? Like if I pulled up that Google Doc, do I see that now or?
No, we'll make that change in that Google Doc, but this is just for our presentation illustrative purposes. So I took that bottom line and added that number in. And again, projected revenue, $37,078,654. Footnote and caveat here, this is with an Act 1 adjusted tax increase of 7.2%, and it's based on data from the assessed data from Perry and Dauphin counties. And it also includes a flatline projection for basic ed subsidy. So until we figure and we receive the finality from the Commonwealth budget, we keep our basic ed subsidy number flatlined. So overall, right now, if we look at the nexus between the two, is approximately $1,933,908 with the Act 1 adjusted increase of 7.2%. Looking at some historic millage review, this is a document I believe we shared previously as well. So if you look at 17-18 and across the board, it is important to note that when there's no increase, certainly STEB kind of takes out and takes its toll. We actually in 23-24 in Perry County have paid less in millage than we have in 21 and 22. So what would a projected, and again, the next couple of slides I show you is mainly speculative, is projection. This is what a potential Act 1 adjusted index impact on a property owner in Perry County may be. So we use the term mills, right? And a mill is a particular $1 for every 1,000?
1,000.
Thank you. So here it would equate to roughly $44. It's actually less than that. It's 43.17, but just for whole number purposes, I used 44 per 100,000 of assessed value. And this is the illustrative impact that it may have on a property owner. To the left is what an assessed value of a home may be, and to the right is what the potential increase in taxes may be on a tax bill. Speculative.
Can you explain when you say speculative and potential? Why is that speculative and why is that potential, and how speculative is it?
So if this were a one county school district and you said that you were keeping the tax millage the same from year to year, you were asking for the same revenue, there would be no change in mills. The State Tax Equalization Board, because we are a two-county school district, imports into the state software what the equalization is, and that's what changes every year. So based upon the numbers that we have right now, this is what the projected would be with a maximum 7.2% increase. But it's speculative because you haven't approved anything yet. So you could say yes, you could say no, you could say change it. So this is just what a projection would be.
There's an ask, because somewhere along the line I thought I heard it would be $100 per $100,000 profit. Could it be that speculative, that it would be off 100%?
No, this is pretty accurate of what it would be. And
that's all I needed.
So Mr. Holmes made a great point about STEB being a two-county system. This is illustrative purposes at Perry. Looking at the Act 1 adjusted index impact on property owners in Dauphin County. And Dauphin has less of a homeowners, less of an area. And because of that, the equalization plays in because of their portion. Dauphin County would be impacted by the State Tax Equalization Board, or STEB. So even if there was no Act 1 adjusted impact, looking at STEB in and of itself, with no Act 1 adjusted index increase of 7.2%, Dauphin County this year would potentially see a 0.71 millage increase due to the rebalance using the software from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. With an Act 1, it'd be 1.6225 mils per 1,000, or $162.25 per 100,000 assessed value. And you will see what the impact would be far greater in Dauphin County. All right. Moving on to the next slide, which is, again, from that report I like, because this is really what it comes down to sometimes. Inflation does hit school districts. 98% of school districts across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania agree that inflation has impacted their budgets, of course, right? So then all of us as school districts look at the pressure to make those decisions. 65.9% believe that raising local property taxes is what's going to happen. 51.4% are drawing from fund balance. Those top two are what we are proposing to you. 35.3% are postponing building renovation or maintenance. Again, I believe we are looking at some of those and using different funds to be able to address certain needs to you. The last is reducing staffing and eliminating positions. One thing I can tell you right now is arguably we're pretty lean in terms of staffing. Anytime that there's an opening, we look at what is the impact if we do not fill it. What's the impact to instruction? What's the impact to a team or the impact to the education? What would that do to class sizes? And what would that do to a particular program? The 24-25 budget timeline. This is important to note that the Pennsylvania School Code does allow for a reduction in millage rate from the preliminary budget to the final budget. So from May to June, you could reduce millage rate, but you can't go the opposite. So when we look at our May budget, preliminary budget, if there is a desire to include the Act 1 tax increase or any tax increase, it needs to be in the preliminary budget. Because if there's zero in the preliminary budget, there's zero in the final budget. If there is a Act 1 increase or any tax millage increase in the preliminary budget, it could be reduced before the final budget in June. Just for, again, transparency purposes, the final budget adoption will be in the June meeting. The June meeting will be June 18th, and I apologize, we needed to move that date because the budget has to sit and be presented to the public as a preliminary budget for 30 days, according to board policy. All right, let's talk a little bit about some next steps, and then I'll answer some questions. We can take a look at any of the items you want to, but I'll skip the top one and go to the second one. My ask is anybody listening, support, contact your state representatives, Congress, to ask them to support and pass House Bill 1422. Really funding and level funding cyber charter tuition at $8,000 would be $1 million plus cost savings to us as a school district. It would be relief to all of us and certainly help to really plan moving forward for what that would be. My other question then is, what questions do you have and what do you wish to have for the May caucus that we can present and provide information that you may need?
Okay, I'll jump in.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to run down what I'm thinking numbers would look like next year. If we're at a $1.9 million deficit this year, and next year there is no tax increase, but we remain flat in our funding, the tax increase should bring in around $800,000, if I remember, that was sort of the number that was given. Plus, next year we will have $800,000 less of ESSER's 3 money. And when the $1 million that was inadvertently left out for cyber charter, there was some discussion about a one-time revenue source that might help to offset in the neighborhood of about $600,000. Would that be about right?
That's fairly accurate.
So I'm coming up with a number for next year of $4.1 million if everything stayed the way it is, which means I think we would be looking at another tax increase next year. And maybe I'm not, after talking to some other board members, I may not have been as clear about this, maybe that I should have been. But before I can even entertain looking at a tax increase this year, there are a couple of items that I would like to see readdressed in this budget. one, I would like to remove the $75,000 for the house renovation / removal, especially if we're looking at borrowing this money that we could use from the borrowed money to do that. Scott, I'd like to remove your gator only because I'd like to use the borrowed money to be able to fund that, because I think that was something that might be able to be done because it's a one-time purchase. And that could still be gotten this year if that money comes in this year. I'm at this juncture, I think I would like to remove the added position in the business office, as much as it might be a nice thing. It's $85,000. And finally, regarding the device refresh, I think I was pretty clear that I was not in favor of a 3-year device refresh. With the 3-year device refresh, we were given a number of $165,000. The number in the budget is $200,000. That was my understanding, was because of potential increase if we should go to an iPad 11 when that comes out. If we go to a 4-year refresh, that 165 times 3, adding 10% for a potential increase, divide that by 4, that number would go from 200,000 down to 140. So I would like to see the number for the device refresh to be put in the budget at 140,000, and I would desire us to move to a 4-year refresh on the iPads. So, to be clear, if those numbers are not taken out of the budget, I can't vote for a tax increase till I know at least I've done my due diligence to remove some of the larger ticket items out of the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So just to recap, A, there's an ask to remove $75,000, which was either for house renovation or house removal. Number 2 was to remove it from the budget and have further discussion if that could be a capitalized expense from any new money obtained by the district. Number 2, the same for the Gator, to see if it could be a capitalized expense necessary from loan proceeds. Number 3 would be to forego for another year, despite several audit findings for delineation of responsibilities and duties, to forego an additional position to the business office. And the last is for us to take a look at a 4-year device refresh cycle and what that device refresh cycle would cost, but also look at trying to cap that around $140,000 based on projections. And we would take another look at what that would look like for a 4-year device refresh cycle. Is that accurate?
Yes, thank you.
Any discussion on those items for potential removal?
I mean, I don't think I have any objections to that. I guess the question is, does anyone have any objection to that?
I'm okay with all those also.
I think the question I have with the device refresh is the concern that it's listed at 200,000 and we're concerned that they're going to spend all of that 200,000? And then is that an understanding of what a budget is versus what a budget is meant to be? Because a budget is just a plan of here's what we project versus that here's exactly what we're going to spend, and we're going to spend all of it whether we need to spend all of it or not. Because I think that to me is the inherent understanding of a budget is just a projection. You could go under it or you could go over it. It is your best guess. And so I think, we have seen time and time again from our administration that they find the best prices. They are very diligent about being cost effective. So if we're going to limit them to say, even if we put $140,000 in there, if the best price that they can come back is $175,000, we're not doing ourselves any justice by doing that. And then to say that we have to have a certain number in there to say whether or not we'll vote for a tax increase. I think a tax increase is really, to me, a long-term game plan of what we need to look at from a district standpoint, from managing our debt. Again, I will say this, is that we are looking at continual increases. When you look at the things that we are faced with, salaries and benefits are going to increase every year, year over year, because of teacher agreements. That is something that we cannot change and we cannot take out. The cost of electricity, the cost of, I mean, Dr. Fox has gone over it. We can nickel and dime and pull things out of this budget as much as we want, but there's going to come a point that we can't take anything out. We have no reserves to continue to pull from. Yes, as much as it pains me as a taxpayer to say that we will have to have a long-term game plan, that long-term game plan, unless we have a windfall of money coming from somewhere, we have to have a game plan of how we are going to fund our budget, and that is through taxpayer dollars, through government revenue, and what's our plan to do that? Because if we don't have a plan, then we have to have some other solution.
I think there was a question in there for me regarding what I was thinking in terms of.
Well, I think what are you thinking as far as by putting an ultimatum, I think, on it.
I'm not giving an ultimatum. I'm just telling you that my vote will be if these things I would like to see addressed. I'm not saying anybody else has to agree with me. I'm saying that if I'm asking for a tax increase, I want to know that I've looked at this budget with my due diligence to see what I can pull out that can reduce that deficit before I ask for an increase. I agree with you. I do know that the costs go up. Our revenues have also gone up in the last 4 years. I mean, we've got about $5 million more in revenue than we did 3 years ago. So yes, you're correct, things have gone up, but so have our revenues as well. And it may not have gone up as quick as the costs, I understand that. Now, in terms of the device refresh, I'm not giving an ultimatum. I'm using the numbers that were presented to us. That was the $165,000 with the quote of what the cost of the devices are as an iPad 10. I understand that there's a potential for that to go up, and I believe the number that was given was an 11% potential increase. I added that money in. I just divided it over 4 years rather than 3. That's my suggestion or my want or my desire that we look at refreshing these iPads every 4 years instead of every 3 to keep on an ongoing cost savings for this district while still being able to provide our students with technology. So in terms of, I'm thinking exactly how you're thinking in terms of the budget. And yes, I understand that our costs are going up, but I'm also looking at where the numbers end up falling. We don't have the increase in the state subsidy. Yes, that number was, you're not adding that in, right? So we know that generally that goes up every year. So there will be some things to offset. You know, at the end of the day, this is my thoughts on this, not imposing this on anybody else. I wanted to be uber clear where I stood on things, and some people have indicated to me that I wasn't being clear. So hopefully tonight I'm clear. Thank you.
Well, I think to your point, Leanne, and I've been at every budget workshop, including last week, although I had to be remote. But we've gone through this whole budget, but until now, I don't think any of us have said we want this cut from the budget. So I think what Dr. Fox is saying, you know, now's the time to do that. Like, we've gone through the budget, but because the administration has done an amazing job of taking things out that aren't there. So none of us, I don't think, have said, I want anything cut till now. And I think that's all you're saying. And I guess to your, not to change the subject, but like you had emailed us as board members and said, let me know things you want us to look at for the meeting. And I said, the one thing I wanted you to look at was things that were in the budget that we should take out or hold off on until we've done a study to determine whether we're going to have new buildings or not. Because I understand we can't let the buildings fall down, but I also understand we should not be putting not to pick on the high school, we shouldn't be putting a new sound system in the high school cafeteria, although I would love to have it, or dressing rooms and all those things if we're going to be building a new building in 10 years. So that's what I had requested, and I don't know if you had time to look at that or not, but I don't want to change what's on the floor either.
No, I think these are all good discussions to have and to look at points of entry right now. Because again, we are one caucus away from voting on a preliminary budget and then voting on a final budget. You spent considerable amount of time, I would say probably upwards to 14 plus 15 particular hours studying this budget on top of the homework that you've done reviewing this document. To answer your question, yes, I did take a look at those. I mean, we certainly always could postpone a sound system, but that sound system could be moved to anything in any place. So I did look at it. Is there any like deferred maintenance that could be done? But no, there isn't in the budget because we kind of wanted to take a look at a capital plan, and then we would bring anything to your attention on a separate capital plan for approval if you wanted to use any of the loan proceeds for anything that results in a capital plan improvement. And again, you would authorize that or non-authorize that based upon a need.
And I think once we have an engineer do a study and we know what we're doing with our buildings, some of these decisions will be a lot easier. You know, like floors might be peeling up, but you know, do we need to replace them if we're going to be replacing a building? And if we get a sound system, I think part of that might be keeping in mind we may need to have something that's a little more portable. You know, I don't know what we're looking at. You know, so
sure, I think they all can be certainly moved. I think when we look at you know, when we toss the idea of a new building, it's taking a look at what currently here, what are our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing issues, building envelope issues, drainage issues, grading issues, concrete issues, building envelope issues on the exterior at multiple buildings. And what does that cost? And then what is the cost of new? Is there a nexus between the two? What is the life expectancy? All those things I think are what you're asking for, and I would want too. And unfortunately, I can't necessarily deliver those because I think we need to look at somebody to be able to do that on a projection. And when we say a new, that's just a projection. Building construction costs, I think, have gone like this, but have started to go like this. Certain materials have still gone like this, is what I understand, but they're starting to level out. All of that is really up to your desire and vision. I will provide as much information as I can. I will contract with as many experts with your approval as I can to give you the best information possible to make an informed decision. And that's really what our goal is. This is your budget.
So
this is your budget.
I appreciate that. So going back to Leanne's question, I asked about I think it was me, like the 3 or 4 year refresh, and I think the answer we were told before was that decision would be made whenever the version 10 or whatever, I don't know the technology. What's that? The 11s come out. Is there a reason we're waiting until then to make that decision, or is that a decision we should make now?
If there is certainly a desire amongst the board to go with a 4-year device refresh cycle, we wanted to see what the 11 price cost and price point was. But certainly if that's a desire, we can go back to the iteration board, brainstorm, look at what a 4-year device refresh cycle would look like, and see what that would come out. We certainly can do that. That's what we do. That is our responsibilities. If that is your collective ask, we certainly can do that.
I'm definitely in favor of the 4-year refresh.
And just again, to be clear, when I'm referring to 4-year refresh, my ask is to refresh 7 through 12, move the current 7 through 12 down through 1 through 6, and we would not be 1-to-1 in kindergarten. So that would be 4 years. Every 4 years, we would move them so that the elementary school would keep them 8, and the 7 through 12 would have them 4.
That doesn't necessarily mean kindergarten would not have access to a device. They just wouldn't have 1-to-1s.
Correct.
Yeah, I would favor that.
So what is the ultimate goal of, and this is a really good question, I think, is the ultimate goal price saving, cost savings mechanism? Is that the ultimate goal that we're asking for in terms of pushing, like looking at a 4-year device refresh cycle? Just so I know what the ultimate aim is. So when we go and we design a plan, another plan, we look at what is the ultimate goal. And that's good, because if it is, then certainly we can look at that.
Well, I don't want to say the ultimate goal is price savings, because the ultimate goal is to provide the best education for our children we can with most economically as possible. And to me, the 4-year makes sense from that standpoint. Otherwise, we could refresh every year. But we obviously can't afford to do that either. It just, of everything we weighed out, the 4-year seemed to make more sense to me from an educational standpoint and a cost-saving standpoint. I don't know what anyone else thinks, but.
Listen, if I had my druthers, I'd go back to only having 1-to-1 7 through 12. I mean, but I've listened to the pros and cons and the counterbalance on all of that. And I found for me that I settled at what I felt was a reasonable compromise, and at the same time, providing a cost savings to the district that allowed us to have a 1-to-1 device from grades 1 through 12, with a refresh of every 4 years in the upper secondary grades, and having the quote older devices in the elementary school. So for me, it's a balance. It's a balance of providing that tool to students and at the same time being able to provide it in a way that's, like as Mike said, economical to the district.
So do you need a thumbs up, thumbs down on the 4-year, or where are you as far as so we can move along?
Well, I think it's a two-way conversation. Because on one hand, we're looking at what is in the best interest to be able to provide for what the students have been, can be, and the future of education, K to 12, and all of our students. So with that said, and with looking at a 4-year, let us go back and look at a 4-year model of what that might be. I think our students can keep an iPad, possibly, for 4 years. What that would look like, what that cost savings may be or not be, I'm not sure right now. I don't have those numbers. I can't kind of spitball that, nor do I know what the pros and cons will be, because I think we have to look at it across the board of what a pro and con would be. Because we want to make sure we share all information to you and with you. If certainly, if this goal or your desire right here as a collective board, and we don't need to do thumbs up and thumbs down because this is a voting meeting, you can direct me one way or another if you want to go which direction or not. I can honestly say there's been a tremendous amount of work put in to a device refresh cycle from every aspect. There's been a tremendous amount of work when it comes to a solar study. There's been a tremendous amount of work when it comes in to finance and loans and bonds. There's been a tremendous amount of work and continues to be for budget. Please note that we will do that work, but I need a collective will if that's the work that you want me to do, us to do as a team, because we also have other work to do, and that's the work of operating a school district respectfully.
So we can't vote on something that's not on the agenda per se. So not, no, I'm not sure how to give you that direction, other than to say, perhaps, we're getting close. Maybe at the May caucus, come back again with the 3 versus. I don't know. Go ahead.
Here's
Leanne.
where I think maybe we can streamline it. There had been a 3-year and 4-year device refresh cycle study done. I mean, it was provided for us. The difference that I'm suggesting, because the cons of the 4-year was inequity, because you would have disparities between the different, there would be different generations of iPads, and then the potential for the technology to become more obsolete more quickly, and then you would have the pricing of an iPad variable because you were rotating on an intermittent basis. My proposal addresses a lot of those, because I'm not looking at them doing 7th grade and then 8th grade and then 9th grade. I'm saying buy them brand new, iPad 11s when they come out, 7 through 12, so everybody has the same generation, and then moving them wholly down 1 through 6 after 4 years, and then buying whatever generation is out brand new for the secondary school. So you would have only 2 generations. That gets rid of your different generations. It gets rid of the issue of the iPad being variably priced, because you're only doing it every 4 years. The only difference is it doesn't provide for a 1-to-1 iPad in kindergarten. And for me, after doing all of my digesting of all this information, that seemed to be the best compromise. So I don't know that this should take, that's why I came up with the number that I have is pretty clear. If you knew that they were going to cost $165,000 per year, times that by 3, that gives you your number, add on 11%, that gives you your increase for an iPad 11, and divide that by 4, you already know, you kind of know what the number is. That's how I got the 140. So I'm not saying don't do more work on it, but I think you've already done it. The only difference I'm looking at is saying, don't roll these over every year and have in this chart, a 5 and 9th cycle with somebody having a 10, somebody having an 11, somebody having a 12, somebody having a 13. Buy them all for 7 through 12 when the 11s come out, and in 4 years, buy brand new ones again and move them down. Do we run the risk of them becoming out of date? In terms of the iOS updates or whatever, perhaps. We don't know that, but we don't know that now even if we go with a 3-year refresh, because we don't know how long they're going to be. But I think we need to move away from a $200,000 or $250,000 a year line item for iPads when we don't need to. That's where I'm at. So yes, you can go ahead and do the comparison, but I think it's already been done.
I would
certainly do what you feel, maybe for the benefit of the rest of the board. Maybe what's clear to me may not be as clear to them.
Speaking right now, my concern is an 8-year-old device. And having a student own a device for 4 years, I have no problem with that. Issuing a student with a device and saying this is your device through the life of middle school or the life of high school, there's ownership to that, right? There hopefully is a pride factor associated with that. But then redistributing that device after 4 years with teenagers, I worry that...
Respectfully, that's what we're doing anyway. We are going to redistribute them. We're just redistributing them at 3 years. We're sending them down to the elementary school. The elementary school students aren't taking them home, so they don't have the same wear and tear on them as what the older kids. And as long as the iOS is up to date, it really shouldn't matter the age of the device. They should function sufficiently in the elementary school.
Certainly, if that's the ask, that's what we'll do. We'll bring back numbers and information on that.
I like the 4-year, but I like the way you did it better. I like that in 7th grade you get a new iPad, and in 9th grade you get a new iPad, or so that you carry that the whole way through the middle school and the high school, and then they go to the elementary school after that. When you get out of middle school, and that one, the 8th grade ones go down, and the 12th grade ones go down.
And my 4-year would not stay. The iPad wouldn't stay with the student. They would stay with the grade. So you would keep them 7 through 12 and then rotate them down. But I think the problem with doing it a different way is that you're going to end up with multiple generations of iPads within the school. So as a new 6th grader comes in, depending on the year of that refresh, they may get a brand new iPad in 7th grade, and they'll just move up until the 4-year refresh is done.
I think that's a management thing. Let them figure that out.
I think the reason why it becomes an issue is because one way you could end up with multiple generations of iPads, which is part of the cons that was in the proposal before. The other way you would not.
If you're buying them 7 through 12, that's 6 years, and you're buying them every 4 years. Like, I don't have my binders at home. So looking at it, then how are you determining what grades you're buying the next year? Are you buying 1 through 6?
You're not buying them for the student. When we buy the 11s, we'll buy grades 7 through 12. We'll get brand new iPads. That was the way it was going to be anyway. We were going to rotate the ones down to the elementary school now, even on a 3-year refresh. That was what was proposed to us. So after those 4 years are done, then 7 through 12 rotates down 1 through 6, and then whatever students are in grades 7 through 12, after 4 years, will get a brand new iPad. It doesn't go with the grade. It doesn't go with the student. It stays with the grade. You may have to shift them around depending on the size of the class. You know, if you have more 7th graders one year than 8th graders, you may have to move them. It wouldn't matter. You would buy them every 4 years. And then whatever you have in 7 through 12 will go to the elementary school.
And again, administratively, that, you know, they may have to re-image every year for a whole, it might be, but they'll figure that out. Unfortunately, Mr. Fry was unexpectedly called away, and he's not here for the rest of the meeting, so he has to pass the torch on to me, the gavel. Is there anything else we need to discuss with budget discussion before we turn over to comments from community? Okay, do we have any? We have no comments from the community. So at this point, I would like to. How about the public? I'm sorry. My bad.
That's all right. It's real quick. There's a lot of comments about the iPads. I hope you hold the students accountable for the damage they do to our iPads, because I'm tired of buying them. I hear things. My kids see things. Our iPads come home. They're taken care of. They go back to school. They're used. I've heard all kinds of abuse that's done to them. I'm tired of it as a taxpayer. So start holding the students accountable and start holding their freaking parents accountable. If you damage it, guess what? You bought it. I don't care if it works. You figure out how you're going to learn from there on out. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the community?
I do. Fortunately, Mr. Holmes stepped out. I don't know if, Dr. Fox, if you can answer the question. Concerning the business office staff member and being audited and told they're overworked and they need another person. If that line item is taken out and we do not add another person to the district, what ramifications could that be in future audits?
It's a great question. There's potential that could continue to be a finding because if you look at segregation of duties. I also want to note that I believe on our agenda tonight was a 19-year veteran who issued her notice of retirement, which is Mrs. Karen Pinson. So I want to recognize all of her years of service. And with that comes a tremendous amount of knowledge that also comes into play. So having somebody with Mrs. Pinson's great ability and institutional knowledge, historic knowledge, and expertise, really you need almost 4 to replace somebody like her. It's going to be tough to fill. So yes, it's a great question. There's potential that could be a lingering finding. So segregation of responsibilities is something that's important to do.
That's been on the audit for 16 years. We get dinged on that all the time because Mike can witness it. It's been on there for 16 years. It happens all the time. And if you look at other school districts' audits, it's on a lot of their school district audits too. It's just saying that they want a 4th person who is signing off on stuff so that there's at least 2 people looking at everything that's being paid in. That's what it is. But they're not finding any money missing. They would rather have another person signing off on it than it was done.
I just have one other quick question about the budget. When we before we vote or whatever at the May caucus or the May meeting, will we get as part of the spreadsheet a tab that shows the revenue, the line items for revenues? You know, like I know you gave us the PowerPoint last week that kind of had like sort of the broader categories, but in past budgets, we'd have the expenditure line items and we'd have the revenue line items. Will we get those as well too, so that we can see sort of those 2 numbers converging down at the bottom?
Sure, we can work on that if that's something that you would like. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Before I adjourn, I would like Mr. Fry to be aware that under my leadership, we had 100% community involvement this evening. So I move that we adjourn.